Leguna wiped the sweat from his brow and stared, stunned, at the endless blue. He had heard stories about the sea, but he'd never believed a place could exist where the world was nothing but water. Now it stretched before him without end, and belief didn't matter anymore. The last few days had been too much to process. As an orphan, survival had meant keeping his stomach from aching and his head down. He didn't see far, and he didn't plan far. That simple, hard life ended 10 days ago when he ducked into a noble's residence to shake off his pursuers. What happened after was a blur. He remembered crouching under a garden tree until the footsteps faded, then the itch in his fingers when he realized how poorly guarded the manor was. Leguna the Nimble, the slums called him for a reason. He slipped to the storehouse, lifted what he could carry, and felt a sudden thump to the back of his head. As darkness closed in, he heard an old man grumble, "Bloody hell, someone's robbing me, and I'm already broke." He woke in a cell. Prison, to his surprise, wasn't awful. 2 meals a day, and the black bread wasn't even moldy. For a first-timer, he felt no fear. In fact, the quiet routine felt like paradise. He even considered learning Hawk's laws and figuring out how to earn the perfect life sentence. Life, of course, ignored his plans. Before he'd had his fill of free bread, he and a handful of inmates were chained together and marched to Port Keter. A few days later, they were herded aboard a ship bound for another continent. In half a month, he'd seen more than in his entire life. He'd lived within Melander's filth and narrow alleys. Now he was looking at plains, forests, and a blue ocean that swallowed the horizon. Another continent lay beyond it. The thought thrilled him. A wet leather lash cracked across his back. "Quit gawking and scrub," a chubby imperial sailor barked. "If there's so much as a fleck left on this deck, you'll be dining on the whip tonight." Leguna rubbed the sting away and bent to work. The sailor nodded, satisfied. An obedient boy who didn't cry out under the whip good. Obedient, sure, but not harmless. As the sailor waddled off, Leguna flicked a glance at a fellow prisoner, then at the sailor's back. Anyone from Melander's slums would have known what that meant. Leguna the Nimble never forgot a face, and he always got even. By nightfall, a 2-meter mountain of a man was kneading Leguna's feet, while another prisoner worked his shoulders. A third, the one he'd signaled earlier, reported in. "Name's Hans," the man whispered. "Well-liked, loyal to the captain, and the chief mate of the ship. He's strong, too. 8 straight warrior. Boss, I'm gonna be blunt. We didn't last a blink against you, but Hans will wipe the floor with you." "I'm not planning to fight him head-on," Leguna said, rubbing his sore back. "But he's had it out for me since I boarded, and I want him to feel it. Tell me something else. Why are they so relaxed with us? Shouldn't there be tighter watch?" "Boss, you've seen the crew," the man said, embarrassed. "Any one of them could take 10 of us. The captain's an 8 straight magus. Even if we all rushed him, we wouldn't make a dent. And where would we run? We're at sea. TCH. Then it figures," Leguna muttered, brushing a hand over the paper pouch hidden on him. Good. His little treasure was still safe. The big men settled him on a straw mat, full of flattery about how thoroughly he'd ruined Hans's day. It was strange to see 3 hulks dancing to a scrawny teen's tune, but strength decided leadership everywhere, slums, cells, and ships alike. When they first met him, they'd thought they'd found a servant. Then his impetus surged, and they couldn't even open their eyes. Being on a ship saved them from a beating. After a friendly talk, they split duties, bed, shoulders, feet. Days of fair weather followed, and the crew noticed that the chief mate's mood darkened with each sunrise. Sure, he'd had a rough stretch, slipped downstairs, sudden diarrhea, his fly mysteriously undone, but he didn't have to take it out on everyone. Still, he did. Any prisoner who slowed, he kicked. Leguna got the worst of it. The sailors walked on eggshells. Some even asked the captain to talk to Hans. The captain only smiled and waved them off. On the 14th day, they reached Port Lormy on Lance's coast, a busy resupply point with inns, warehouses, and a jail. The captain left a handful of 6th and 7th strata men to guard the prisoners and granted shore leave to the rest. That night, after most of the crew had gone ashore, Hans barged into the captain's cabin. "Captain, I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to pound that kid," he snapped. "Easy, Hans. Sit. Tell me what happened. The captain's face was refined, untouched by the weather, a contrast to his rough chief mate. Hans took a long pull of rum and began to rant. That brat Leguna has gone too far. If you tell me to look the other way again, I'll go mad. I'm going to beat him senseless. Besides slipping you up, giving you the runs, and, the issue with your zipper, credit to the lad for doing it unseen. What else? The captain asked, amused. That wasn't the worst, Hans growled. Oh, worse than that. There's plenty you don't know. Hans hesitated, then blurted. When I was in the lavatory, thanks to his laxative, he tossed a tin can in, right into the pit. The captain stared, then pictured the splash and nearly winced. That explains the smell these last 2 days. And he smeared chili sauce over my clean clothes while they were airing, Hans added through gritted teeth. No wonder the chef's been complaining about stocks, the captain said, secretly impressed by the boy's creativity. Still, Hans, haven't you done your share? When you ordered him to clean the lavatory, you looked ready to make him lick it. That's because he started it. And didn't it start after you whipped him? The captain asked. To hell with that. If you hadn't ordered me to, why would I waste time on that devil? Hans burst out, teetering on the edge of a breakdown. Thinking, Captain, when are you going to get rid of him? I can't take it anymore. Make sure I don't touch a drop of liquor for the next 2 days. If I get drunk, I'll wring his neck. Hans snapped, eyes bloodshot. Even someone of his strength was fraying under Leguna's constant tricks. I know it's been rough, the captain said calmly. Endure a little longer. Once we reach Brisinus, things will go back to normal. Can't we just leave him here? Hans pleaded, on the verge of tears. Absolutely not. He goes to Brisinus, the captain replied, firm. He paused, then added, don't worry. Now that we're ashore, the prisoners will be cuffed. He won't get the chance to pull anything. How we end up with this mess anyway? We usually haul ordinary prisoners who can't even use impetus. This time we have a fifth stratum user, Hans grumbled. Which is why he's not a normal prisoner, the captain said. 2 more days. We sail hard tomorrow. Get some rest. Hans threw back 2 more gulps of rum, then froze as his gut churned and a sharp pain twisted his belly. The captain blinked as Hans bolted for the door, only to reappear moments later. What is it? Forgot the toilet paper? The captain asked dryly. No, Captain. Hans, pale and urgent, waved off the joke. I just remembered. I poured this rum from the public barrel. Which barrel? The captain asked, already putting the pieces together. The one filled tonight. The captain's expression changed at once. Round up every sailor who's ashore. Now, and take 2 men to check the prisoners at the town jail with me. Understood. Hans barked, then doubled over as his stomach seized again. Damn it. I'll send the second mate. You. Finish your business and meet us at the jail, the captain ordered, striding out. That night, Leguna tossed on a straw mat, too irritable to sleep. Hans had been giving him grief for days, and worse, the secret concoction Leguna had brewed wasn't behaving as planned. Instead of knocking Hans flat, it sped up his metabolism and made him twitchy and short-fused. Leguna had designed the mixture as an analgesic laxative blend. Hit hard, put him out, slap him a few times for good measure, and lift whatever he carried. Reality disagreed. He replayed the attempts in his head. First try, slip a dose meant to fell 2 grown men into Hans's dinner. Result, Hans rubbed his stomach and slept like a baby. Second try, a dose for 10 into his tea. Result, Hans sprinted for the latrine. After half a day lurking and watching, Leguna, furious, tossed his half-eaten canned food into the pit. Hans returned smelling worse, found a reason to scold him, and made him scrub the place. Third try, dumped the rest into the rum barrel when no one was looking. Useless, no drinking at sea. The stuff was potent. He'd once used it to lay out a 4th stratum warrior for a full day, bowels and all. But on an 8th stratum fighter like Hans, it was just a strong laxative. Rolling over, Leguna noticed the guards had slumped to the floor. The captain had allowed the jail detail 2 mouthfuls of strong rum to warm themselves after the long voyage. It was the same rum Leguna had laced. On 4th and 5th stratum sailors, it worked a charm. His heart kicked. He'd spiked the barrel to vent his anger, not expecting it to hand him an opening. He fished 2 thin wires from his hair. If he could smuggle a pouch of brews, Wires were easy. Back in the slums, these were his meal tickets. There wasn't a lock in Melander they hadn't tasted. He sat up and glanced at his 3 cellmates. They were dead to the world, snoring like thunder. He hesitated. He could run alone. Instead, he nudged one with his foot. "Hey!" The man only groaned happily and rolled over. Leguna squatted and tapped his cheek until his eyes cracked open. "What is it, boss?" "I'll dump the chamber pot tomorrow," the brute mumbled. "Forget the pot. We're leaving, Lori. If you don't want to be a slave, wake Iman and Jillrock," Leguna said, already working the lock. Lori jolted fully awake, took one look at the wires, and shook the others. By the time Iman and Jillrock understood, the door clicked open. They stripped keys from an unconscious sailor and freed their ankle chains. "Move. Stay close," Leguna ordered. He was young, but he slipped through shadows better than any of them. "What about the others, boss?" Iman asked, nodding at the neighboring cells. Bleary prisoners stared, pleading. "Open them." More runners, more chaos. More chaos, better chances, Leguna said, tossing him the keys. Soon every cell was open, chains shed. Iman stepped to a downed sailor, raised a stolen blade, and swung for the neck. Clang! A steel-bright ping rang out. Laguna's wire, impetus humming, knocked the sword aside and buried itself in the stone. "What are you doing?" Leguna asked, voice cold. "Killing sailors," Iman said, smiling. "They're unconscious. They're not the problem. Our job is to disappear, not start a slaughter. They'll be on us when they wake. Better to finish them now," Iman snorted. Laguna's eyes narrowed. "I'm not letting you." Iman sneered. "Think you're something because I called you boss twice? What can you do besides throw punches?" "For you," Leguna said, impetus stirring the dry straw at his feet. "That's enough. Oh, spare me. You barely held the 3 of us last time. Now there are more, and we've got steel." Iman waved the sword. 7 or 8 freed prisoners closed in, blades ready. Jillrock stood with them. Only honest Lori hung back, uneasy. "You really thought I massaged your feet because I liked you?" Iman went on. "You never wondered how I knew so much about Hans? Use your head, brat. Are you mad? Murder gets you the rope. If they catch you again, you won't even end up a slave," Leguna said, face draining. Iman laughed, the sound cracked and wild. "Playing dumb, or are you truly stupid? Why do you think we were exiled? You think you're special? Do you know how many slaves die on Lance? Some get sold to orcs as meat, others to dark elves for their guts. Even humans will work you to the bone. Lives? I stopped counting." "I haven't," Leguna said. "They're my men." A new voice cut through the corridor, calm and iron-hard. "They're mine," the captain said, and every prisoner froze where he stood.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
"Idiot," Leguna insulted as his face turned glum. "Thanks to your messing around, none of us can leave now." But he did say he cared about his men, didn't he? A trace of viciousness flashed past Iman's eyes before he gestured for the other prisoners to hold the unconscious sailors hostage. "Listen here, old fool. You should know these methods are not beneath people like us. If you value the lives of your men at all, you better let us leave this instant," yelled Iman in desperation, his eyes darting around to locate the source of the sound. "Please understand your current predicament. You don't even have anything to bargain with. I'm only giving you one chance. If you give up, I will make sure your end isn't an ugly one," mused the captain without bothering with Iman's threat. "I'll show you what I have." Iman snickered before he swung his sword towards the sailor at his side. Before his hand could go any further, however, he was shocked to find he could no longer move his body. It was a level 3 petrification spell. Given its simple effect, the spell was stronger the closer the dictator was to his target. It was apparent an 8th stratum magus's petrification spell was more than enough to stop Iman, who did not have a trace of impetus, from blinking. The captain gradually appeared at the entrance. In fact, he had been there invisible all along, looking calmly at the situation in the jail. When he manifested, his hands burst into a waving fury as numerous magical bullets headed straight for the armed prisoners' faces in beautiful arcs. This is my final warning. Those who can still move, get back into your cells and secure your cells with the chains. Otherwise, I'll roast you alive, barked the captain coldly with a fireball that emanated waves of shuddering heat floating within the palm of his right hand. Seeing the prisoner succumb to his first volley of attacks, the captain gradually relaxed and dispersed the fireball in his hands. He maintained only his cold stare. It was at that time when a small, thin silhouette rushed out from the group of people and squeezed through the small gap between the captain and the entrance, making its way out to the deck. Darn it, I forgot about that kid, thought the captain, shocked. He had to monitor the prisoners, however, and couldn't exactly give chase. He was certain Leguna wouldn't be able to escape with the second mate present, though. Leguna's heart thumped like a loud drum. He knew not where his dedication and courage to escape came from, but after he heard all the prisoners were people who had committed crimes that warranted capital punishment or lifelong sentences as slaves, Leguna couldn't help but feel deep fear for his future. While it was true and only natural for a child a little over 10 years like him to fear death, he was mad at Iman and the rest and couldn't imagine living with the three murderers. That was why he chose to escape when the captain's attention was not focused on him. Right now, however, he regretted his rashness. The second mate looked at Leguna with surprise. He had never expected a prisoner like him to have fifth straight impetus. Not only that, he was the one Hans picked on the most. However, he had chilled his gaze and prepared to kill the escaping prisoner as stipulated by the Empire's laws. He unslung the bow on his back and drew an arrow from the quiver in a swift motion. After knocking the arrow, the low thrum of a bowstring could be heard as an impetus-infused arrow shot towards the boy with eye-blurring speed. The second mate was actually a ranger well-versed in archery. Leguna swerved his head sideways, and the arrow barely missed his head. It scraped his scalp as it flew by. The trace of impetus on the arrow opened a small wound near Leguna's ear. Blood dripped from it slowly. The captain noticed and suddenly realized he had never informed the aide that Leguna was to be treated differently from the normal prisoners. The arrow had almost taken the child's life, and the second mate was already preparing his second shot. "Spare his life," shouted the captain. The second mate, shocked to hear the captain's instruction, accidentally released his arrow. It nicked the child's arm, drawing even more blood. Leguna was terrified by the prospect of his imminent death. In his 10-odd years of life, this was his first tussle with death itself. Such fear pushed him to the brink of a mental collapse. The single thought that dominated his little mind was simple: I need to leave. His immense drive to survive had taken control of his body and caused him to run straight to the walls nearby. Idiot! How can you scale a wall that high? The ranger continued to draw his bow once more leisurely. This time, his target was Leguna's calf. What happened a second later, however, completely threw the ranger into a stupor. The moment the kid reached the wall and melded into the shadows, a black smoke emanated from his body and wrapped around him before it gradually spread upwards. By the time the smoke subsided, he was nowhere to be seen. What the heck is going on here?" cursed the second mate. The captain had subdued the remaining prisoners and ran to the ranger's side. "What's wrong? Where's the brat?" That brat. He was forced to that wall over there, and a black smoke came out of nowhere, and then the brat was gone," stammered the second mate in reply. "The heck, is something wrong with your eyes, or did you turn insane?" retorted the captain disbelievingly. "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes," argued the second mate. "So you mean to say he was here just now and managed to escape using a transference spell?" asked the captain, furrowing his brow. "That's right. That's definitely it," nodded the second mate. "Definitely your ass. The transference spell is a fifth stratum spell. Even I can't dictate it. How could a brat of 10 do it? He isn't even someone who's trained in impetus. Do you think a brat like him can both be a 10th stratum magus and an impetus user? Don't make me take the blame for your damaged brain." The captain dropped all decorum and merely continued to rebuke the second mate. "I swear it's true," said the second mate, his fingers in the air. Before he finished, Hans finally came over to resolve the situation. "Captain, how's the situation?" asked Hans. "It isn't too bad. All the prisoners were apprehended. Only Leguna managed to escape," replied the captain grumpily. "What? That brat actually managed to escape?" asked Hans, shocked. "Just ask the second mate. He's the only one who had an eye on the brat," replied the captain. After another round of arguments, Hans and the captain had no choice but to accept the second mate's explanation. "What we do now, Captain?" asked Hans. The captain paused in thought for a few moments. "Send some of the crew to search the area tonight. If we can't find it by daybreak, we'll continue our voyage as planned," answered he finally. "But Captain, didn't you say Leguna was handed to you personally by Master Merrilet? If we don't take him to our destination in one piece, how will you explain this when you get back?" reminded Hans. "It's no big deal. The master only instructed me to bring him to Lance alive. If possible, I was to deliver him to Starfall, but we've completed our mission even if we don't," replied the captain. "Why did you have me mess with the kid, then?" asked Hans, unable to resist his curiosity. "Well, I can only say it's a whim of the master," the captain said as he smiled bitterly when he recalled what Merrilet told him. "When the child's on board, have someone mess with him. As long as he don't cause permanent harm, you could do anything you want. That darn brat. There's no way I'll let him off this easily for barging into my territory." He pale, white moonlight penetrated the canopy and seeped gently into the grass on the ground. The forest, lush green during the day, was a subtle silver under the moon's gaze. Leguna landed on the grass with his bottom. He gazed at his surroundings with surprise before he tried to recall what had just happened. He could still clearly remember that a few seconds earlier he was within the confines of the jail at Lormy, just about to be hit by the third arrow the ranger loosed. But when he was forced to the brink of despair, his vision turned black and a rush of fatigue filled his mind. He fainted. By the time he woke, he found himself in this forest. His memories didn't have any missing piece, nor could he find any hints of blackouts. He knew what had happened at the jail had occurred mere seconds ago. His heart was even still thumping from all his running. He could not conceive an explanation for how he had ended up in a place so different in mere seconds. Was it a transference spell? Did Magus help me? Guessed he. According to what little knowledge he had, if there was anyone who could use transference spells, they would be a magus. Only a transference spell could transport someone so far away in seconds. Either way, that person saved my life, thought Leguna. He stood up slowly and mimicked the knights in the stories he had heard. "Thank you, oh great one, for lending a hand. If it would not be of any inconvenience, I hope to be graced with an audience with you." Leguna tried not to say it too loudly. He was afraid he was still close to Lormy. There was no telling what kind of spell the captain might have up his sleeve. He might be able to detect the slightest noise he made. Leguna waited, but even after a good while, he had yet to receive any response. The only noteworthy thing that happened as he waited was that a squirrel perched on a nearby tree and started throwing nuts at him. It was as if it was protesting Leguna's disturbance of the forest in the middle of the night. Leguna merely rubbed his head and raised his voice slightly. "Since you're not willing to show yourself, can this humble one ask for your great name, so this one might be able to repay your kindness one day?" The squirrel tossed a few more nuts his way, far larger than the last. Enraged, Leguna stared at the sky and waited for a reply. Still nothing. "Either way, I thank you for gifting me my life," said he finally, feeling too awkward to continue standing in the forest so aimlessly by himself. It was at that moment that Leguna felt a drop of viscous fluid land on his head. Raising his hand to touch it, he found it was bird droppings fresh from the creature that had just flown past. A nightingale could be seen perched on a branch nearby, chirping as if it was saying, "What the heck is that moron doing here?" talking to himself. At #%, and cussed Leguna in frustration. "Wait up, Kurdak! I want to drink some water," groaned a tall woman with an incredibly shapely figure. "Just come and get some yourself." "It's tiring enough already, you know," said the man called Kurdak with dissatisfaction. "Tisish, all I asked was that you hand me this little thing," nagged the woman. "Ah, you've got a point," Kurdak patted on the huge rucksack slung in front of his chest. This sack only weighs around 75 kilograms after all. Why's a level 7 warrior like you getting smug over carrying some bag? I can even see how hard a time you're having from all the sweat on your skin, she teased. I'm not only carrying your stuff, Kurdak said while patting on a rucksack slung over his back. There's your sack, my sack, and a bunch of equipment and weapons. All the stuff I'm carrying easily weighs over 250 kilograms. So what? It's good training for you. But Vera, Kurdak said as he raised one hand with much difficulty, look here. I can't even draw my sword easily. What would we do if we encountered danger? Come on, we've used this path so many times. How dangerous could it possibly get? Also, Cyranos and I have your back, said Vera carefreely. But right at that moment, a loud roar burst from the underbrush not too far from them. Look, I told you, Kurdak said as he returned the rucksack to Vera. Oh, come on. It's just a couple of quick shadow drakes, said Vera as she received her rucksack grudgingly, despite the excited expression she wore. Quick shadow drakes were not too much of a threat, and their leather skin sold for quite a bit as well. What now? Do we kill them? Asked Kurdak as he drew his two-handed sword. Of course. Why ignore a bunch of gold coins that came running to us? Vera unslung her bow before nodding to the silent Cyranos. All right, let's do the usual. On my lead, Curtis said, breaking into a smile. Leguna managed to dodge the blow, a blow that would have squashed his head. He didn't think, however, that there was another claw approaching him from the left. The move ended with 3 more claw marks on his body. He used the momentum from the blow to jump out of the encirclement, but fell into despair once again a moment later. He had already wandered in the forest searching for its edge unsuccessfully for 3 whole days. He had had to drink water from a nearby lake and eat a few wild fruits to keep himself going. Even though he had managed to kill quite a number of beasts with his 5th stratum impetus, the forest was far too big and he could only rely on his instincts to navigate it. It ended with him going deeper and deeper into the forest all the way to the areas where fiend activity was high. Fiends were basically larger and stronger beasts, multitudes more threatening. The only differences between them and normal animals were their higher intellect and the ability to use magic. The quick shadow Drake's Leguna had just run into her no doubt the weakest magic beasts he could encounter. They weren't much smarter than normal animals, but they were stronger, faster, and had tougher hides that afforded them more resilience. While a single quick shadow drake was only as dangerous as a black bear, the critters had an incredibly troubling trait, living and moving in packs. Under the combined attacks of more than 10 quick shadow drakes, Leguna was pushed to the brink. Not 10 seconds would pass without 3 or 4 more cuts appearing on his body. Even though the last 3 days wandering made Leguna more mentally resilient, he still despaired when he found himself in such a situation. I'm going to die here, Leguna thought. It's a shame I wasn't able to find you in the end. In the very moment he gave up, he detected a powerful arrow approaching. Its target was not him, however, but the quick shadow drake closest to him. Vera, pay attention to the kid and protect him. I'll rush forward and end the drake. Cyranos, cover me, instructed Kurdak before he charged at the drakes. Like most pack animals, the quick shadow drake alpha male was the pack leader and was the one organizing the lives and hunts of the others in its pack. Should the alpha drake be killed, the rest would no doubt fall into disarray, which would make them easier to pick off. Kurdak, understanding well the behavior of drakes, charged straight for the strongest-looking one, the one the furthest away. Its head fell with a wave of his sword. Fresh blood stained his face. It made him look rather haggard. With the alpha drake's death, the pack had lost their leader. Some of those busy attacking Leguna began to crawl towards Kurdak as they cried out deafeningly. Ha ha! I can finally get a good workout. Kurdak smiled crazily before he used his impetus to fuel his jump to the group of quick shadow drakes heading his way. The next impetus-infused swing of his sword beheaded 3 more. At the same time, the 2 creatures behind him were killed by Cyranos without Kurdak even having to bat an eye. Be careful. If their skin is ruined and can't be sold for a good price, you'll hear from me. cried Vera before she shot down a drake that tried to attack Leguna. Given the ability of Kurdak's party of 3 and the level of their gear, they were able to hold their ground against 30 or so quick shadow drakes with only minor injuries. With more than 12 of the fiends slain, including the alpha drake, the rest of the battle proceeded smoothly. In just 2 minutes, the rest were slain. Leguna observed the party that had suddenly shown up and exterminated his attackers. He didn't know their purpose, but they didn't seem hostile, so he lowered his guard. I seem to have been quite lucky, thought he. He smiled at the approaching Kurdak and fainted. Is he dead? Why did he smile at me like that before he died? Asked Kurdak as he kicked Laguna's head lightly. You know he's still alive, said Vera as she rolled her eyes. What do we do now? Take him with us? Asked Kurdak. Vera looked at Laguna's young face, covered in mud and blood, before she sighed. He's still a child. Let's bring him along. I doubt I can leave him for dead out in the wilderness like this. Kurdak looked at Cyranos, who nodded. I don't care either way. Very well. Let's treat his injuries here and set up camp. We'll decide when he wakes up tomorrow. Let me make it clear now that if he can't walk, you'll have to carry him on your back, Vera, decided Kurdak. Vera furrowed her brow and groaned. Why me? You're the one who wants to bring him along. Ugh, I suddenly feel it's okay to leave him here. All right, let's go. Oh, come on. Brother Kurdak, look at how small the kid is. Just look at his injuries. He's so pitiful. Just bring him along with us, please. Then you carry him. But I'm just a weak little girl. I don't have the strength. I don't care. Are you sure? I, Kurdak, have never gone back on my word. When I say I don't care, I really mean it. Sheesh, Kurdak, keep this up, and you'll know what happens when this OL gal gets mad. Wait, anything but that. All you have to do is talk to me in a civilized manner, all right? I'm a reasonable person, Kurdak said nervously before he looked at the dirty Leguna and mumbled. Oh, great. I've picked up a muddy monkey. The silent Cyranos had already begun to treat Leguna's injuries. A strong, burning hunger forced Leguna back into consciousness. He turned around and gazed at his surroundings. He was currently alone in a tent. Another, different pain shot up his spine from his stomach as he moved. The pain came from his wound, disturbed by even such a small movement. He grunted in pain reflexively. You're awake? Asked Kurdak, who opened the tent's entrance when he heard a grunt inside. Leguna recognized the man. He was the one who killed the quick shadow drakes with one slash. He sat up with great difficulty. Were you the one who saved me? Thank you so much. May I know where this is? Asked he gratefully. Hey, you don't have to be so formal with me, the man said. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Kurdak, a mercenary. The man flashed his badge. Nice to meet you. I'm Leguna, replied he. He suddenly wondered whether telling Kurdak his story would be a good idea. It would do him no good to tell others he was an escaped fugitive of Hawk. If the Empire offered a bounty for his recapture, there was a chance the mercenary would exchange him for the reward. And given Leguna's current condition, there wasn't much he could do to escape. Seeing Leguna's hesitation, Kurdak seemed to realize something. I can somewhat tell you're a criminal of the Empire just sent here from your clothes, said he with a smile. When Leguna raised his head alertly, Kurdak raised both his hands in the air. Don't worry. Since we saved you even though we know your identity, we won't be sending you back. Even if we do, there's nothing in it for us, calmed he. Seeing Leguna keeping his silence, Kurdak continued. I know you have a lot of questions right now. I'll be blunt. You should know you've been transported all the way to the continent of Lance. This forest, called the Silver Moon Forest, is near the coast. The other party members and I just finished a mission to escort merchants and ran into the quick shadow drakes on our way back to Starfall. It's just a coincidence we managed to save you. Look here, Kurdak said as he shrugged. I've already told you so much. You can at least tell me your past, right? Leguna thought silently for a moment. I was originally an orphan living in Melander. I was probably jailed because of theft. Somehow I got sent over to Lance, and then I managed to escape. I've been wandering in the forest for days. Kurdak furrowed his brow. I have 2 questions. Shoot. Firstly, according to what I know, most prisoners transported to Lance are convicted of serious crimes, such as robbery, murder, rape, or the like. It's a little absurd for you to have been sent here for theft. Additionally, I heard Hawk wanted to simplify things and don't exile anyone who can use magic or impetus anymore. I saw you use 5th stratum impetus when you struggled against the drakes. Kid, even though I've saved you out of the kindness of my heart, you're still unwilling to tell me the truth? Are you still hiding something from me? Asked Kurdak, dissatisfied. I can't make you believe me. Leguna smiled bitterly. I thought about the same things. I really don't know why things ended up like this. Kurdak observed Leguna's expression. He was likely telling the truth. There wasn't much he could do but change the subject. What do you plan to do now? Leguna hesitated. Plans? I don't have any. I don't know what to do, said he uncertainly. Since that's the case, you should follow us back to Starfall. It'd be difficult for you to travel as you are now, suggested Kurdak. Starfall? Where's that? It's the largest human-constructed city on the continent. I live there along with my partners. Upon hearing about a human settlement, Leguna felt a rush of joy and appreciation for Kurdak's generous offer. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Didn't I say you don't have to be so polite? Also, saving you is completely Vera's idea, so she's the one you should be thanking, Kurdak said as he got up, waving his hands. Can you move? Let's go out to meet my partners. Okay, said Leguna as he stood up with much difficulty. Hey, Kurdak, it's time for dinner. Oh, the boys awake? Come here and eat, greeted Vera energetically. Thanks. Hello, I'm Leguna. I'm 15 this year, said Leguna with a troubled look. Even though he was a little baby-faced and had a small physique, Vera looked no older than 20. He felt uncomfortable being treated like a child by someone only a few years his senior. Oh, Big Sis here is older than you by 4 whole years. Come on, have some meat I roasted for you, said Vera as she handed over a piece of drake meat. Thank you, miss, for saving my life, said Leguna as he chewed frantically on the meat he had practically grabbed from her. That's nothing much. Kid, you must have been quite badly starved, huh? Vera looked at Leguna with pity before she stroked his hair while he scrambled to replenish his energy by eating as much as he could. Hey, you're not that much older than him, you know. There's no need to go all maternal on him, is there? Kurdak couldn't stand seeing Leguna spoiled and finally complained. Hey, you've been starving for days. It's best if you don't eat too much at once, he reminded, patting him on the back. Take your time while I introduce you to my partners. This impudent lass here is Vera. It was she who nagged me to save you, said Kurdak as he pointed at her. Leguna nodded thankfully before he began to observe her closely. Frankly speaking, Vera couldn't be considered much of a beauty. Her looks were average at best, but her fiery red hair, coupled with the fine features on her face, made her quite pleasant to look at. Vera's most redeeming quality in terms of looks was her figure. Leguna had never seen a woman with such an amazing figure. Vera was decently tall and slender. Her 2 long thighs were nicely curved, unlike other slender women, whose thighs were thin as branches, or larger women, who had trunk-sized thighs. Those magnificent legs, coupled with her slender waist, as well as her filled bosom, caused Leguna to go into a bit of a trance. Even though he wasn't perverted by nature, he found himself unable to resist staring at her body that oozed sexiness. He quickly snapped out of his stupor and averted his gaze. He didn't dare to look at Vera for too long. Look at this guy. He's quite the shy one, huh? It's no wonder I'm often hailed as the most beautiful flower of our mercenary party, exclaimed Vera haughtily. Well, I suppose Rafflesias are flowers too, Kurdak retorted. You're the only female in our party, so the title of most beautiful doesn't mean much at all. Kurdak, a bear like you doesn't have a right to criticize me. Do you think I won't dare cut your filthy paws off and cook them for a meal? Barked Vera as she drew the dagger, sheathed at her thigh, and waved it around. I can't be bothered to argue with you, Kurdak said in an attempt to hide his embarrassment, before he turned to Cyranos, who was skinning the drakes, and yelled, Cyranos, the kid we saved is awake. Come over here and see. Leguna looked closely at the approaching Cyranos with the help of the fire's illumination. Even though he wasn't as huge as Kurdak, he looked rather handsome. His cold expression added more allure to his looks. This is Cyranos, the one who tended to your injuries, introduced Kurdak heartily as he put his arm around Cyrano's shoulders. "Thanks for saving my life." "I'm Leguna," nodded he thankfully. Cyrano's merely nodded slightly. He didn't say anything in reply. His silence made Leguna feel a little awkward. "Don't mind him. Cyrano's has always been the quiet type. We hardly hear him speak more than 10 times a day. Trust me, though, he's a good fellow." "It's fine," said Leguna with a smile. "Boss, how far is it to Starfall from here?" asked Leguna as he walked around using an old wooden branch as support. After spending a few days together, Leguna and Kurdak's party had started to become better acquainted with one another. When he found out Kurdak was the party leader, Leguna began calling him boss, much to the huge man's delight, who even thought Leguna was a kid who knows his stuff. Kurdak took the map out for a look. We'll exit Silver Moon Forest soon. It'll take us a day or so to get to Polo Plains." "What's wrong? Are you looking forward to it?" "Nah, not really. I just feel my body still isn't quite right yet. Keeping this pace up for too long will be my end," said Leguna as he shook his head. "Tsich, to think you'd have the guts to say that. Had it not been for you, we'd have arrived at our destination already." "Fine. Thank you so much for keeping up with me, boss," consoled Leguna before he turned around. "Naturally, good people like Big Sis Vera and Big Brother Cyrano's definitely wouldn't leave me unattended." At least you're not a complete idiot. The way you've been sucking up to Kurdak over the last couple of days makes me think you're gradually becoming his minion," said Vera. "What minion? That's not the way I like to look at things. Lay's personality just happens to sync well with mine. That's all. Also, given how sensible a person Lay is, even he can see how harshly you've been treating me. It's so bad he'd stand up against your tyranny for my sake. Ain't that right, Lay?" muttered Kurdak. "Of course," accompanied Leguna, right on cue. "Huh," groaned Vera as she tilted her head. "No, I meant the opposite. Big Sis Vera's the best person I've ever met. Wouldn't she even treat you harshly, boss?" "You're going a bit overboard," said Leguna the moment he felt a chill down his spine. "That's better," said Vera as she nodded with satisfaction. "You filthy traitor. All the care I've shown you is wasted. To think you'd rebel against me so soon. You won't have any dinner tonight," barked Kurdak angrily. Without the slightest look of shame on his face, Leguna walked to Kurdak's side and whispered, "Well, boss, I'm sure you know Big Sis's personality better than I do. I had no choice. Don't worry. No matter what I say on the surface, I'm always standing on your side. You shouldn't fight with her in the future. Even if you talk better than she does, it doesn't matter when her claws and teeth come out." "What are you saying?" Kurdak said spiritedly. "I'm a proud man. I would never submit to such a barbaric woman. Don't get the wrong impression. I'm just letting her do so because I don't want to teach her a lesson in front of you. When we return to Starfall, I'll show you how I deal with her. I'm her leader after all. If I can't even make sure my party members are in order, how would I be able to finish my missions?" As Kurdak tried to show his tough side to Leguna, his voice gradually got more audible along with his soaring excitement. The moment he snapped out of it, he realized Leguna had already shrunk 4 meters behind him, looking at him with pitiful eyes. When he turned around, he saw Vera's squinted eyes closing in. It ended with Kurdak crying in pain. "Hey, Vera, listen to me explain. I was just joking around with Leguna." "Ouch. Stop scratching. Just stop. Let's talk, okay?" "Arg. Don't go overboard, Vera." "Yow. I'm gonna get mad if you keep this up." "Ack. Fine, it's my bad, okay?" "Ah. Darn it all. Leguna, why are you staring at the skies and not stopping her for me? There ain't no stars in the sky at this time of day. And Cyrano's, don't you remember what I did for you when you pissed her off? Come over here and help me." "Ah. Save me, please." Leguna didn't respond to Kurdak's desperate cries for help and asked Cyrano's, "Do you have moments like this too?" Cyrano's merely smiled without replying. 2 days later, everyone finally arrived at the city of Starfall. Leguna had managed to find out much about the continent from their conversations along the way. Unlike Chino, the western continent, legend stated that humans didn't use to live in Lance. It was only after humans developed maritime technologies and disciplines like sailing that they discovered Lance. Many volunteered, or were forced, to move to the continent to make a new life. Despite the passage of time, Lance didn't become the territory of any nation. Instead, a unique form of government emerged a federation of cities. There were 9 human cities in total on Lance. Due to the threat posed by elves, orcs, and other races, the relationship between the cities was rather tight-knit despite their autonomy. Whenever any of the cities were invaded by another race, the humans from other cities would send reinforcements unconditionally. Starfall was one of the cities, and it had the largest territory and the greatest population. It was the most developed of them all. One thing worth noting was that the cities of Lance didn't forbid non-humans from staying there. Some non-human races friendly to humans could live in the cities and were even welcomed. After all, many of the race's talents were greatly appreciated in human society. 2 such talents were the impeccable smithing skills of dwarves and the deep understanding elves had for magic. According to Kurdak, half the residents of Starfall were non-humans, who also represent 1/6 of the people traveling in and out of the city. When Leguna first saw the place for himself, he was truly amazed that such a majestic place could exist. "Why are you acting like such a bumpkin? You're from Hawk, aren't you?" asked Kurdak curiously. Actually, Leguna had good reason to be awed. Even Melander paled slightly in comparison to the splendorous Starfall. The only thing about the Imperial capital that could rival Starfall in terms of age and history was the millennium-old ancient capital of the Empire of Stock. "Oi, Kurdak, you finished your mission?" asked the guard warmly. "I have. I'm finally back. I'm definitely going to rest for a good few days first," replied Kurdak with a smile. "Oh, who's this kid?" asked the guard as he looked at Leguna, filled with curiosity. "This fellow was lost in the forest. We picked him up on our way back. Well, I really need to go get a nice bath and a good rest. I'll treat you to a drink in a few days," said Kurdak as he waved to the guard and entered. As he walked on the clean streets with Leguna, Kurdak asked again, "So, have you thought about what you're going to do from now on?" I still don't know," replied Leguna blankly. "If that's the case, I have a suggestion for you," said Kurdak. "Feel free, boss." Kurdak looked at Cyrano's, and the two nodded at each other before Kurdak began. "Well, since you've been calling me boss for so many days now, why don't I become your real boss?" Leguna launched into a flurry of questions. "Boss, are you going to start a gang? Will I have to collect protection fee on your behalf? How much will we collect a month? Which area will be our territory? And is protection fee that easy to collect? I'm afraid I can't bully people if they're too strong." "What the heck are you talking about?" Kurdak asked with an exasperated look. "What I meant was you join our party as a mercenary." "Huh? A mercenary?" muttered Leguna with hesitance. "What? Are you looking down on mercenaries now?" said Vera, as she furrowed her brow. "It's not that," Leguna said with a bitter smile. "My entire life was in the slums. It was hard, but never really dangerous. I've heard mercenaries are always between life and death. I've even heard they're always dancing on the tips of blades. If I was honest, I'm quite cowardly and afraid of death. There's no way I could be a mercenary." Had it been a Leguna from a month before, he would have never agreed to Kurdak's suggestion no matter what. However, after everything he had experienced since, especially the 3 days he spent stumbling around in the forest, Leguna's will have been polished and toughened quite a bit. He also felt while traveling around with Kurdak and the rest was rather dangerous, it was far more rewarding and happy. He didn't refuse the suggestion right away and only regarded it with hesitation. "Bullcrap. The peace in Melander has made you an idiot," Kurdak exclaimed, rolling his eyes. "If you really think you can mess around in the slums and survive like you did in Melander, I guarantee you'll die in half a month without anyone knowing better. This is Lance, the Eastern continent, and nobody is half-witted as you can survive here. Had I not thought you a decent person with a bit of skill, I wouldn't have bothered inviting you. But working in this line is kinda..." Leguna paused when he reflected on the time. He was chased down and surrounded by the quick shadow drakes. Such an experience was no doubt a part of a mercenary's daily life. With risk comes reward, understood? I've heard one only manages to survive barely by struggling in the slums on a day-to-day basis. But look at me. I've earned tens of gold coins easily by finishing only one mission, and that's enough for us to feast on delicacies for a whole month without worry. Also, I've been living like this with Vera and Cyrano's for more than 6 years, and we haven't encountered any setbacks so far. Tens of gold coins? exclaimed Leguna, eyes gleaming. He had grown up in the slums from as young as he could remember and only got to earn a few copper coins at best. Occasionally, he would sneak around in the homes of rich people and borrow some items and sell them. But even so, all the money he had gained from such endeavors in a whole year only amounted to 2 gold coins. Kurdak's income was nothing short of staggering for Leguna. "Kid, I think you still don't realize your own value," Kurdak said. "After all, you do have 5th stratum impetus. Even though impetus users aren't as rare as magi, you're still someone who can take 3 to 4 people on your own. If you want to, you can even hunt in the forest for a vocation. For instance, the skin of the quick shadow drake sells for 20 silver coins each. You'll definitely be able to take them on with your skills. I've truly never seen someone as useless as you who won't even utilize the abilities they have and are satisfied with doing menial work for a few worthless coins." I didn't know I was that capable," said Leguna, a little annoyed. It was no wonder he was so timid. He had only gathered impetus in the last half a year. As he was used to being oppressed, his habit of treading carefully carried on even after he gained impetus. Because nobody could recognize the abilities he had, he was thrown into jail after a silly mishap and transported to Lance on a whim. However, he didn't tell Kurdak this. He worried the man wouldn't believe someone could possibly train impetus up to the 5th stratum in half a year. "So, have you made up your mind? I wasn't lying when I said what I did. Since you don't have any family to rely on, there's little chance you'll be able to start a business here. Heck, given that brain of yours, doing business will only see you on your path to bankruptcy. There's also no way you'll be able to become a gang leader and collect protection money, given how cowardly you are. And you'll definitely be unable to work as an administrative official since you're not educated. With the job market as tough as it has been lately, only good students can find employment. You'll only be looked down on given your low intelligence. And, young as you are, I doubt anyone would hire you to become a guard. Your young face makes you look like a person who just graduated from kindergarten. Let's forget becoming the male pet of rich female nobles too. You don't have the looks. I think even orcs would find your dirty state distasteful." Boss, that's enough. I already feel more worthless than a piece of crap." Leguna cut him off. Leguna felt like he could bury himself in a small hole after hearing Kurdak describe him. "Your only redeeming factor is your strength. Adventure with me, and I will make sure you'll have more delicacies than you can ever eat," tempted Kurdak. "Well," Leguna still looked rather hesitant. "Sheesh, what's there to hesitate about? Do you think your sis will let you suffer?" "Don't worry, I will definitely protect you from any danger," encouraged Vera. Leguna looked at the two of them before he turned to Cyranos, who was smiling at him slightly. "Very well, boss. I'll join your party as a mercenary," said he finally. "Wait a second. Do you think we're begging you to join us? Do you think it's all you need to do to join? Whether you can come with us or not is not that simple," said Kurdak. Leguna's face twitched as he spoke. "Boss, are you messing with me?" "That's not it, Lay," Kurdak said seriously, shaking his head. "I really want you to join us. However, I have to be responsible for my party members as the leader. If you're only cooperating with us in the short term, then there's no need to worry about it. But since you're joining us for good, I have to make sure you're not a freeloader. That's why I want to give you a test. If you can complete the test, you will gain the recognition of the entire party. We can only trust each other if we recognize each other's abilities, and trust is the key to a party survival. I also need to have a grasp of your abilities, so I won't give you instructions you can't carry out. If I did, it wouldn't just be bad for you, but also for everyone else in the party." Then, Leguna prodded carefully, "What if I don't pass?" "Well, I can only apologize for not letting you join," Kurdak said blankly. "I knew it. You're messing with me," said Leguna as his facial muscles tightened. "Come on, a young guy like you should have more confidence in yourself. Kurdak won't intentionally make it hard for you." "Don't worry," said Vera as she patted on Leguna's shoulders. "Hey, let me get this out first. If you can't pass the test, I definitely won't let you join the party, all right?" said Kurdak, smiling. "TCH, you're just putting up a front. I don't believe you'll actually stop him from joining," commented Vera softly without Leguna hearing it. "When is the test?" asked the boy sourly. "Let's do it tomorrow. You wash up today, get some clothes, and rest. I'll tell you about the test tomorrow and get you some necessary tools and equipment while we're at it, Kurdak said after some thought. Oh, and are your injuries fine? Leguna moved all his limbs before he nodded. Just about, said he. That fast? Kurdak asked, a little surprised. But your wounds were sewn together just days ago. Perhaps it's because I was beaten frequently since the first day I can remember. Leguna smiled bitterly. I've been pummeled worse than this, but no matter how bad it was, I was always fine after 2 weeks. The medicine Cyranos gave me worked great. I managed to heal in just a week. Oh, poor Leguna, said Vera as she ruffled the boy's hair. What a weird one you are, Kurdak muttered. Come on, follow us. We'll make you more presentable so others don't think you're some feral pet we picked up. You're the one that looks like a wild bear, commented Leguna under his breath as he struggled to get away from Vera's hand. Hey, I already bought the clothes and put on the table near the door. It should more or less fit, so wear them for now. Seriously, though, are you made of mud or something? This is the 3rd bucket of water, and you're still not completely clean, said Kurdak through the steamy room. I haven't been able to clean up properly, said Leguna, a little embarrassed. Strictly speaking, he should have omitted the word properly from his sentence. It was his first time bathing. It took him quite a while to figure out how to use soap nuts to wash his hair. He was quite embarrassed at how the first bucket turned completely black so quickly. He had to ask for another bucket after just a few moments. When the second bucket turned dark just as quickly, Kurdak asked the inn-owner to send up one more bucket. After going through 3 whole buckets, Leguna was finally clean. The clothes Kurdak bought fit rather nicely. They were neither too big nor too small. Before, you looked like a muddy monkey, but now you're all cleaned up. You're starting to resemble a decent human being. I have to take back what I said before. I think you might stand a chance at adoption right now, said Kurdak as he looked at the youth and nodded with satisfaction. Vera's reaction was far stronger than Kurdak's. Wow, what a beautiful little boy. Leguna's actually a little cutie, isn't he? Come on, let Big Sis have a hug. She walked over and gave Leguna a suffocating bear hug as she spoke. It was hard to say whether he was worth envying or pitying. Given his short stature, he didn't even reach up to the tall Vera's chin, even when he straightened his back completely. Vera was also wearing tall leather boots, so she would look more attractive, which only added to his predicament. It ended with Leguna's head stuffed into Vera's full bosom. He had to struggle just a breath. Vera, on the other hand, had no self-awareness. She saw nothing but a cute little boy. The more she looked, the cuter he looked, and it made her hug him even more. She didn't want to let go at all. Leguna, on the verge of passing out, was only released once Vera noticed Kurdak and Cyrano's odd gazes. Huff, I'm not a little kid. Puff, I only look a little young for my age. Ack, if you do this again, I'll get mad, protested he, his face completely red. No one knew whether his current complexion was because of arousal or asphyxiation. Come on, Big Sis is just fooling around with you. Don't get mad, said Vera casually. She found the youth more interesting as time passed. TCH, now you're acting like the good kid after enjoying the goods, snapped Kurdak. Leguna turned to look at Kurdak and saw 2 words that might as well have been written on his cheeks: envy and jealousy. The word hatred was also almost visible on his forehead. Cyrano's, on the other hand, merely looked at him oddly. I'm just a kid. There's no way I can compete with real men like Boss and Cyrano's. Leguna's expression quickly changed into one of a cunning merchant. His smile didn't come anywhere near his eyes. I can't be bothered to talk bull crap with you. Come over and tell me of what you're capable. I need to know so I can come up with a fitting test, said Kurdak, not bothering to show him any kindness. I thought you already had something in mind, exclaimed Leguna, confused. Idiot. If I'm going to test you, it's going to be on how far your capabilities extend, right? If you're a magus, would it make sense for me to test your strength? Barked Kurdak. Leguna wiped Kurdak's saliva off his face and flattered. Oh, boss, you're too profound for me. You are very wise. Of course. How would I be the party leader otherwise? Kurdak said with a satisfied look. So, tell me what you can do. Tell me about the things at which you excel. Does eating a lot count? asked Leguna after some deep thought. No way in hell, Kurdak retorted, sending another wave of saliva sputtering on Laguna's face. Please take this more seriously. Are you tough in fights? Fast? Can you sneak around well? Do you have good eyesight? Tell me something useful. Boss, I wonder if this counts as a skill, said he as he showed off the thing in his hand. What? Sheesh, Leguna. When did you take my money pouch? Exclaimed Vera. Leguna rubbed his nose embarrassedly. It's a habit of mine. I couldn't help myself when it was practically asking to be taken. Don't blame me. Vera snatched the pouch and stowed it hurriedly. Vera put the pouch away without counting the coins inside. Leguna couldn't help but feel a trace of joy scratch at his throat when he noticed. Of course. That's one skill. What else? Asked Kurdak as he nodded. Well, I can pick locks pretty well. I managed to earn quite a bit back in Chino with only 2 iron needles, Leguna said before he paused in thought. Even though I've never really tried it before, I think I'm rather good at blending in and not being noticed. Looks like you're a born thief, said Kurdak. I had no choice. I had to do this to survive, said the boy uncomfortably. So, you're basically a rogue? A rogue. All right, I got it, answered Kurdak after some thought. After making sure the child was asleep, Kurdak and the rest met up. I really don't understand. Why are the folks of Moonshadow doing this? Lay isn't here to harm us, is he? Asked Vera as she furrowed her brow. Are you an idiot? Kurdak glared. We've never done anything to antagonize the Moonshadow Thieves Guild. They have no reason to harm us. Also, if Moonshadow really wants to get rid of us, all they have to do is send someone to capture us and do their worst back at their base. It makes no sense to do something so overly roundabout like sending someone to join the party. I agree with Kurdak, nodded Cyrano. That's why, Kurdak said as he shrugged, we don't have to care too much about the details. Let's just treat this like any other mission. Since we've received the payment, we'll just do as they say. There's no point in pondering too much. You're right, Mr. Kurdak. You're smarter than you look, you know, said the voice of stranger. The 3 started in shock when they felt a cold breeze rush to Vera's back that caused her to tremble uncontrollably. All of a sudden, a man of small stature clad in black leather armor appeared behind her. Kurdak looked like he was about to say something, but before he could start, Cyrano reacted. He leaped to the man after drawing his sword and yelled, Vera, run. Vera forced herself to calm down and unsheathed the dagger on her thigh. She swept it behind her. Neither managed to touch the man in question. The man merely smiled before he caught Cyrano's wrist with his right hand and twisted. The airborne Cyrano felt a wave of force assail him. By the time he regained consciousness, he was sitting on the chair like nothing had happened. The man had his hand lightly pushing against Vera's right shoulder. They felt a wave of force that stopped her from moving altogether. A high-order fighter, thought both Vera and Cyrano in awe. Suppressing the 2 so easily was definitely not something a mid-order warrior could accomplish. Please calm down. I don't have any ill intentions, said the man, smiling. Mr. Arikos here always likes to make his appearance in this distasteful way, said Kurdak with a displeased look. All right. I believe I should apologize, Arikos said as he got up slowly. Mr. Kurdak, would you care to introduce us? Kurdak closed the door Arikos had opened when no one noticed and sat back down in the chair with a sigh. Fine. This here is the member of Moonshadow Thieves I told you about, Mr. Arikos. He's also the person who came to us with a request. These 2 are my partners, Vera and Cyrano. So what have you come here for? Arikos took out a large sack from behind his back, seemingly out of thin air, and tossed it onto the table before. This is 300 gold coins, as we agreed. You can count it if you like. There's no need, Kurdak said with a wave of his hand. I believe Moonshadow will not swindle us over a sum like this. I do, however, have something I'd like to ask. Feel free. Even though we mercenaries usually don't ask the purpose of our missions, your request is a little bit of an exception because of how weird it is. We don't need you to tell us about the details, but I hope there's something you can tell us to ease our minds. Any explanation would definitely benefit both us, Leguna, and the one who made the request. Even though Kurdak was intentionally vague, Arikos understood what he was trying to communicate. I understand, he smiled. Don't worry. My request can be considered a training program for a prospective new member of the guild. I can assure you he doesn't hold any ill intentions towards either you or anybody else. I wonder if this is enough to reassure you. It's enough, Kurdak said with a relieved tone, prodding the sack on the table. Since that's the case, I believe you should take the pay for the request back. Oh, what do you mean? Nothing, really, Kurdak answered. I really like this kid. I really want to be his friend. I don't want to make this a monetary transaction. If I receive your money, I'm afraid my interactions with him in the future will be affected. Also, if word gets out that I saved someone for the sake of money, my reputation in Starfall will plummet. My reasoning is just that simple. But don't worry, even if I don't take your money, I'll allow Leguna to join you. I'd love to have him on the team, given how well he plays along with my messing around. Even if you don't want the money, what about your partners? Asked Arikos as he looked at Vera and Cyranos. There's no need for us to discuss this. I'm confident my partners are not the kind of people who would do that, said Kurdak as he looked at his partners confidently, who both nodded in response. Good. As expected of the mercenary party with the best reputation in Starfall, it seems choosing you is the right thing to do. However, I still have to ask you to take the money, said Arikos as he pushed the sack forward. What? Kurdak exclaimed, furrowing his brow. Do you think we're just putting up a front? I don't doubt your sincerity at all, Mr. Kurdak, Arikos explained. I'm only looking out for Leguna, who came to this place without a single coin. Kurdak shook his head. Mr. Arikos, you're understating, he said seriously. He was just a little bit short of being naked when we found him. Well, there's that, Arikos said with a weird look. Basically, he's a poor kid. And if he's to join your party and become a mercenary, there's no doubt he'll need some equipment. This money is to be used for his initiation. Feel free to use what remains as you please. Just consider it as Leguna treating you to a drink or something. Naturally, like before, please don't reveal any information about either me or the guild. What kind of lucky encounter did Leguna have? Kurdak spouted. Apart from eating, I really don't see how he's better from us in any way. Yet, he managed to get the attention of big guys like you. Will you be sending people to protect him in secret as well? Now, it was Ariko's turn to shake his head. No, your life as mercenaries will be the same as it has always been. We won't send anyone to follow or protect you. Don't be too careless when you choose your missions in the future. We won't have your back. All right, I even thought we'd be getting secret bodyguards or something. Is there anything else? I'm sure you didn't just come here to give us the money. Naturally, Arikos said as he nodded. The main reason I've come is the test you want to give Leguna. Sis, are you sure you're buying this for me? This costs a whole 50 gold coins. Even though the money spent wasn't his own, Leguna couldn't help but feel despair when he looked at the price tag. How Vera was acting also reminded him of the scene the previous morning. Right after he was woken by Kurdak, they began to plan what they ought to do for the rest of the day. Kurdak said he would head to the Mercenary Association to fill out the necessary paperwork to complete their mission. They also had to organize the spoils, such as the skin of the quick shadow drakes, which would be best sold quickly. Cyranos would be in charge of bringing all their weapons to the smithy for maintenance. Let's go, Leguna. We'll have a shop owner kneel before us and sing our praises. Vera's speech and spiritedness sent shudders down the other three. Seeing that the kid didn't quite understand what was going on, Kurdak secretly took him to a corner. Hey, that woman never pays attention to how much she spends. You need to be careful, kid, whispered he. You gave her 200 gold coins. She can't spend it all, can she? Asked Leguna as he looked at Vera, who was still cheering incessantly. You don't get what's going on at all, said Kurdak, sending another wave of saliva onto Leguna's face. Leguna rubbed his face expressionlessly. Boss, you really have to change the way you speak. Kurdak didn't bother with his comment. The more gold that lass has, the faster she spends it. If you give her 20 gold coins, she'll use it in a week. If you give her 50, it'll be gone in a day. If it's 100, it'll be gone in half a day. If she has 200, it'll be all used up before she leaves the first shop. What the heck? Leguna was speechless. He really couldn't imagine how a person could spend 200 gold coins in a single shop. Was Vera going to buy the whole shop? Boss, don't let sis bring me out. Perhaps you or Cyranos can do it instead. Do you think I can stop her? Asked Kurdak, frowning. Leguna turned to the excited woman. If even you can't, how am I supposed to stop her when she's in the zone? You must no matter what. If you don't, she might end up pawning you at the shop for money to fuel her spending. I won't be able to ransom you back if she does, barked Kurdak before he left in a hurry. Leguna returned and looked at the money pouch dejectedly. From the time they left the inn, he and Vera only visited 2 shops. They bought 2 adamantite daggers, a mithril longsword, 6 throwing knives, 2 grappling hooks, 1 5-centimeter long, fine as a hare's silver needle, and a blow dart set at a weapons shop called Hammer of Flame. Afterwards, they headed to an equipment shop called Path of Survival to buy a few smoke bombs, trap parts, 2 sets of tight-fitting leather armor, gloves, shoes, and a pair of bracers. Right now, Vera had her eyes on the cloak hung on the shop's wall. Come on, I'm not worried yet. So why are you? Vera said as she looked at Leguna, who was armed to his teeth with satisfaction. She turned to the shop owner and said something that made Leguna lose his wits. Owner, let me take a look at that cloak over there. Bracers are guard for the wrists and lower arms popular in and around the early 14th century in Europe. Today they are colloquially referred to as wrist guards. This lady here has a good eye for things. This shadow cloak is one of the best items we have in our store. Even though there are so many who want to buy it, we can't even bear to sell it ourselves. The old owner of the shop smiled brightly. His face wrinkled like a blooming daisy. Owner, please wait. Let's talk it over first. Darn it, I said to wait, yelled Leguna, almost cursing. The old human owner of the equipment shop was far slimier than the dwarven blacksmith in Hammer of Flame. No matter what Vera had her eyes on, the owner of Path to Survival would praise it like it was a divine instrument. In response, she would ask Leguna to pay for it. Sheesh, my little man. I can see this lady is buying this equipment for your sake. You should be glad she's spending so much money on you, said the boss as he took down the shadow cloak from the wall, thinking, if I don't take a bite out of this piece of juicy meat, I won't forgive myself. Yeah, she's spending money on me, but it's money ending up in your pocket, retorted Leguna. The owner was not the slightest bit mad. He merely continued to show the shadow cloak off to Vera. This shadow cloak is made from a material specially selected from a stealthy magic beast, the myriad form lizard. After treatment by an alchemist to ensure the softness of the material, this cloak still retains the amazing color-changing properties of the lizard. It's definitely the go-to item for people who want to sneak and stalk. Miss, hesitate no more. Since you've bought so much for me already, I'll let you have it for the low price of 45 gold coins. It's basically just the cost of production, you know? If not for the fact that you're so beautiful, I wouldn't have offered you such a killer deal. Come on, this is the most luxurious thing you can get for the lowest price possible. Sis, we've already spent more than 120 gold coins, said Leguna, his voice trembling. Oh, wonderful. We have 70 more to spare. You have a deal, exclaimed Vera, completely misunderstanding Leguna. Don't tell me you intend to spend it all, cried Leguna desperately. Come on, if Kurdak gives me that much, it means he's okay with me spending all of it. What would I do with the 50 gold coins that are left if I only spend 150? Money not spent is just another weight to bear when traveling, said Vera, as she snatched the pouch. I really don't. Leguna's brain shut off the moment he heard Vera's logic. Phew, you sure got a huge haul today. Your equipment is even better than mine, said Kurdak after Leguna returned to the inn in the evening. Leguna's eyes were filled with a look of gratitude. Boss, I've really made you spend too much. Don't sweat it. It's just a small matter. The money is from our party funds, after all. It's not mine alone. Also, when you join our party, I'll have you earn it back, so don't worry about it, said Kurdak carefreely. Mused Leguna as if he didn't hear what Kurdak just said. Oh, every time after we finish a mission, we'll have a tenth of the reward saved into our party funds, said Kurdak when he saw Leguna's confused look. I wasn't talking about that, Leguna said. You mentioned that I have to pay this back? Of course. Kurdak rolled his eyes. That was 200 gold coins, you know. Who'd pay us back for it aside from you? Boss, what if I leave your party? Asked Leguna gingerly. No problem. Kurdak, said as he waved his hand with a cheerful smile. Just when Leguna was about to breathe a relieved sigh, Kurdak's expression tensed up when he said, "I'll let you leave when you pay us back." "Can I just leave the items with you?" asked Leguna with a sorrowful look. "I want money, not equipment," said Kurdak calmly. "I've just sold myself, haven't I?" cried Leguna in despair. Leguna started his test the following evening. Within the building at the center of the yard is a book with a dark blue cover. There's only one book like it in the building. It shouldn't be hard to spot. You have to sneak inside and locate the book. Naturally, the courtyard will be guarded. You can deal with them however you please, but make sure not to inflict any lasting injuries. Of course, killing them is out of the question. "That's all," explained Kurdak. Even though Leguna was rather nervous about whether he'd be able to pass the test, he was relieved to learn that all he had to do was steal something. Even though he didn't like to admit it, he didn't get his moniker Leguna the Nimble for nothing. He arrived at the inner part of the courtyard. He quietly retrieved the grappling hook he used to scale the wall. He was already familiar with its use thanks to the day's practice. He paced along the wall slowly in the shadows. He didn't catch any of the guards' attention. "Do you think Lay will pass the test?" asked Vera as she took a sip of booze. Her face was slightly flushed. Kurdak and his two mates were drinking and chatting in a tavern. They weren't too worried about anything bad happening to Leguna, given that Arikos had said he would be responsible for the test. "It will be tough," Kurdak said after he took a swig. Moonshadow deployed level 4 security after all. Even though there are no magi, the sheer number of traps laid should cause him quite a bit of trouble. "I have a feeling he'll succeed, though," Cyrano's countered. He seemed to have loosened up from the alcohol and appeared more talkative. "Perhaps you two might not have noticed it, but the kid is rather hard to spot in the darkness." "Huh? What do you mean?" Kurdak laughed before he took a bite of his steak. "Are you saying his presence is weak in the night?" "I'm sure you know there's a breed of people who have special talents," said Cyranos. "So you're saying," Kurdak mused, "no wonder Moonshadow is willing to put so much resources into a brat like that." "What are you talking about? Why don't I understand a word you're saying?" asked Vera, confused. "Well, it's not exactly a secret," Kurdak laughed. "Actually, that kid is—" Bam! Leguna suddenly appeared beside their table and slammed the book. "Boss, why are you drinking so casually?" "I was almost doomed." Kurdak didn't think Leguna would actually finish his assignment so quickly. The book on the table seemed to be the one he was instructed to steal. "Stop playing dumb," said Leguna disdainfully. "What do you mean? Explain yourself first." Even though Kurdak was involved in the test, he didn't know what Arikos had planned specifically. "Fine, let's see the look on your face when I finish telling you about it," said Leguna unforgivingly. 20 minutes prior to the scene at the inn, Leguna had managed to sneak into the inner courtyard. "These fellows are bumbling idiots," thought he. He hadn't encountered any difficulty so far. He was extremely careful at first. He did his best to avoid the patrols. But when he realized the guards were seemingly unable to notice his presence, Leguna began to act more boldly. He gave up on the notion of infiltrating through a more obscure route and rushed forward under the shade of 2 large trees. Even as he did so, nobody was able to detect him. He was rather lucky to have picked such an approach. If he had used the surrounding building's roofs, he would have been met with a myriad of traps that plagued its surface. Even though they might not have been able to hold him there for too long, they definitely would have been nothing short of troublesome. Given that he had managed to sneak in using the shade of the 2 trees and the increased sneaking capability afforded by his cloak, he couldn't help but be surprised at how quickly it took him to arrive at his destination. He observed his surroundings in the shadows and realized that the book was guarded by just 2 guards and a patrol that circled the building. The building had no windows at all. Only one door was visible. "It looks like the security here is rather lax." After confirming his suspicions, he picked the opportune moment to rush to the side of the building and used the grappling hook to pull himself up to the roof. I knew there would be a skylight. He couldn't help but be awed by his luck. Even though the skylight was only as big as a wash basin, which would stop an adult man or a fat child from entering, his sleek frame had no such trouble. After carefully opening the skylight, he made his way down and looked around. There wasn't much within the building, and he quickly managed to locate the book. "Done deal," whispered Leguna as he pocketed the book. "Congratulations," said a middle-aged man clad in blue armor who barged into the room and looked at Leguna with a bright smile on his face. It was none other than the man who had planned the test, Arikos. The moment Leguna tried to make his move, Arikos had already appeared in front of him and pressed a dagger that radiated magic against his throat. "If you're smart, you better not move an inch," said Arikos coldly. Leguna raised both his hands behind his head as a gesture of surrender. He knew better than anyone the disparity of power between him and the man, and he remembered Kurdak had assured him the test wouldn't pose any threat to his life. He decided to go with whatever Arikos had in store for him. "Now, let us talk," Arikos said confidently as he sheathed his dagger. "Tell me your name and the reason you came here." Leguna looked at the man quietly. He had no intention of replying. Even though Kurdak had promised him the test wouldn't cost him his life, there was no telling whether an accident might happen or not. He felt he just had a run-in with some powerful faction. That was why, even though he didn't rat Kurdak and the rest out, he secretly cursed Kurdak's ancestors up to the 14th generation. Arikos was not surprised to see the boy not willing to talk. He patted on Leguna's chest and took the book UT with a look of intrigue. "So, you're here to steal this book? What happened next?" asked Kurdak. "Well, he kind of gave me a long lecture and wanted me to trust that the Moonshadow Guild didn't hold any hostile intentions against me. But he wasn't about to let me off that easily since he wasn't sure if I'd read the book's contents or not. In the end, he gave me two choices. The first was to join the guild. That way, it wouldn't matter if I've read the book already. If I didn't, he'd kill me right away," explained Leguna. "So what was your choice? Isn't it obvious enough? I'm no idiot. Of course, I chose to join the guild. He took out a contract and had me sign it. He also wrote a letter and asked me to report to the odd job department at Ballur Street," said Leguna as he waved the letter in his hand around. "To think you wouldn't have an inch of suspicion for a plan with so many flaws. And you just said you're no idiot," thought Kurdak before he said with surprise, "Wait, sign? You know how to write. Of all the things I told you, that's what you're surprised at," said Leguna with a disgruntled look. Kurdak calmed down after hearing Leguna's explanation. "All right, I more or less understand what happened. Let me ask you again. How have I doomed you?" "You," muttered Leguna angrily. Having had such a close pass with Arikos, he went straight to the tavern to ask what was going on. He had panicked and hadn't thought much about what had happened yet. Now he was asked about it again. He realized nothing really bad happened to him after all. "See, after completing your test, you managed to obtain a book and join Moonshadow Thieves. You might not know this, since you haven't lived here for any amount of time yet, but Moonshadow is the largest thieves guild on the continent. Their chairman's influence far exceeds that of Starfall's continent. I managed to introduce you to such a bigwig." "How have I doomed you?" asked Kurdak confidently. "What kind of place did you ask me to sneak into? And who's that guy Arikos? I've never seen such a strong person before," asked Leguna, much weaker this time. "Oh, that's one of Moonshadow's places. They set it up to test the ability of potential members. I expected you would remain undiscovered if you were as skilled as I thought. It appears I was wrong." Kurdak casually spun a lie, since he knew Leguna wouldn't be able to tell the difference. "Heck, I think Arikos must have been a high-order fighter. No wonder he discovered me. What was in that book? How did Kurdak know it was there in the first place? What is that book about anyway?" wondered Leguna. "I heard about that book long ago, but I don't know what's written inside." "Well, since you returned safely, why not take a look inside? Since you passed the test, I can officially accept you into our party. Come here and have a drink," said Kurdak in an attempt to change the subject. Leguna took a huge swig from the mug and suddenly felt the alcohol vapors choke him. The liquor flowed like lava down his throat and into his stomach. Cough, cough. Even though it was Leguna's first time drinking liquor that strong, he forced himself to resist the sensation because he didn't want to be looked down on by Kurdak. "Not bad." Kurdak chuckled. "This flame bearer is one of the strongest liquors the tavern has. When I took my first gulp, I choked myself quite badly. I didn't think you would be able to withstand it at all. You should have said so earlier. I almost got internal injuries from this," barked Leguna before he reached for some water to wash the liquor down. "All right, let's talk business. Since you're a member of our party now, we should discuss your share of the rewards. Before this, each of us got 3/10. The remaining tenth would be added to our party funds. For example, the equipment you bought used our party's funds. Our feast before and after mission also used the money from that fund. Now you're one of us. We have to redistribute the reward. I wonder if you have any thoughts? Asked Kurdak. I'm fine either way. I managed to save up quite a bit of money over the years. I'll be fine with 1/10 less, said Vera nonchalantly before she took another drink. I'm fine as well, said Cyranos. Boss, you don't have to do this for me, Leguna said after he gave it some thought. I know I should be happy just being a party at all. I'm a sensible person. How about we do this? Each of you take 1/20 less, so we have an extra 3/20. I'll take 1/10, and the rest will go to the party fund to pay for the equipment you bought me. When it's paid in full, I'll take the other 5%. Kurdak saw Vera and Cyranos nod in agreement. Kid, you don't have to be that thorough. Consider your equipment a gift. You don't have to pay it back. As for the distribution, we'll do it your way. We'll each give 1/20, making your share 3/20. Since you're a new member, your share will be slightly less than ours. We'll adjust it accordingly when you complete a few missions. But boss, all this costs more than 100 gold coins, countered Leguna. Enough. Since you call me your boss, then you should heed my decisions. This matter is decided, said Kurdak as he waved his hand dismissively. That's right. Just listen to what Kurdak says. We really don't mind, said Vera, as Cyranos patted on Leguna's shoulder. But all right. Okay, tomorrow you'll go with me and report to the Mercenary Association. Mercenary Association, mused Leguna, confused. It seems I have to clue you in on the basics, Kurdak said after he took another drink. I bet you think almost all humans on Lance belong to the Federation of 9 cities, who decide the fate of the continent, right? Leguna gave it some thought. Isn't that so? He asked finally. The 9 cities are like 9 kingdoms, so the one who rules over them is the king. They're the most powerful, aren't they? Kurdak furrowed his brow. While you aren't completely wrong, you've still got the wrong idea. Firstly, the 9 cities' influence is far smaller than you think. Secondly, even though each city is like a kingdom, the relationship between them is much closer, to the point they formed an alliance to protect their mutual interests. In some ways, you could consider them a single body. That body is called the Federation of 9 Cities. The Federation is just one of the 4 powers on the continent. The 4 powers? Parroted Leguna. That's right. Unlike Chino, there are no nations on Lance. Most of the population here are exiles. The harsh living conditions force most of us to train in either battle force or magic. That's why there are far more adventurers here than on Chino. With most adventurers living risky lives, not many would settle down in one place for good. They can't officially be recognized as a permanent resident of any city. That is also why the Federation's influence is smaller than you think. Additionally, we adventurers can choose to join different factions for different benefits. Among those many factions, there are 4 which reign supreme. They are respectively the ones in charge of the cities, the Federation of the 9 Cities, the ones that champion the interests of mercenaries, the Mercenary Association, the ones that have the widest information network and provide assassination contracts, Moonshadow Thieves, and the smallest faction with the least members, but their members comprise 1/3 of all magi on Lance, Eye of Arcana. Our party can be considered part of the Outer Circle members of the Mercenary Association. Outer Circle members? Mused Leguna. That's right. Even though the Mercenary Association has their own mercenary band, they are unable to fulfill the ocean of requests that are sent their way every day. So, they also act as mediators and distributors of those missions to third parties registered with them. Those parties are considered their Outer Circle members. Missions that only require 3 to 5 people are usually free for members of the Outer Circle to undertake. Naturally, the association will collect half of the reward. That's why they're called an association instead of just being regarded as a very large mercenary band, explained Kurdak. Half of the payment? Why so much? Asked Leguna, surprised. This is a fair price. Naturally, people are free to post mission requests to the public without going through the association, but it's not without its risks. Most people don't know how effective smaller mercenary bands are. If a weak mercenary group gets scared away by bandits, then wouldn't the one who requested an escort be doomed? To prevent this from happening, the association keeps records of their outer circle members and rate and rank them based on their mission success rate and performance. This way, mission requesters don't have to worry too much about those that accept their requests. It goes without saying that the association also collects a fee from the requester, meaning the association benefits from both sides of the transaction, explained Kurdak patiently. But boss, Leguna hesitated. Didn't I already sign a contract with Moonshadow? Am I still allowed to join the mercenary association? Of course, Kurdak said confidently. If I recall correctly, you've been assigned to the guild's odd job department, right? Yes. Then there's no issue. The odd job department is considered part of the guild's outer circle. I heard they operate in shifts, so you usually only have to report in for a task on a monthly basis. The guild won't meddle in what you do when you're not on shift. Actually, as long as you're not a high-ranking member of the guild and don't take missions that interfere with the guild's interests, even if you're an inner circle member, you can still take requests from the association. This is the common understanding between members of all factions, said Kurdak. Then, it's fine, said Leguna, relieved. All right, kid. I've already told you more than enough for today. Don't trouble yourself over this too much. Let's drink and celebrate today and leave the other stuff for tomorrow, Kurdak said as he raised his mug. Let's celebrate Leguna joining us. As Leguna and the others were busy getting drunk in the tavern, Arikos walked through Moonshadow Thieves Guild headquarters with a stack of documents in hand. Everyone who encountered the small and slender man bowed respectfully. Just as he was about to enter the chairman's office, a girl around 16 with short ice blue hair walked out. The chairman is waiting for you, said the girl in a chilling tone unbecoming of someone her age. Even though she worked for the guild, she didn't wear the equipment of a rogue. Instead, her petite, yet well-endowed figure was clad in a sky-blue robe, something a magus would wear. Oh, my beautiful Enlate, I truly am fortunate to run into you here. Did you miss me? Flirted Arikos, behaving completely unlike the insidious man he appeared to be when he was with Leguna. Please don't waste the chairman's time. Go in. Enlate turned and left without even giving Arikos a look. That snow woman. Arikos gave Enlate an empty look before he shook his head, smiling. He calmed himself and knocked on the door with a respectful expression before pushing it open. Within the room was the most powerful man in Moonshadow Thieves, the most respected assassin on Lance, Wireless Deep Shadow. The man was waiting for Arikos patiently while enjoying his tea. How's it going? Asked Wireless right away. His voice was deep and firm. It resonated with the confidence and elegance of a well-mannered gentleman. Arikos bowed slightly. It's going well. Laguna's performance far exceeded our expectations. Tell me more. Yes. According to our observations, his impetus isn't that strong. It's only around the 5th stratum. However, I did manage to get some information about him from the West. After going over it, I realized nobody in the slums where he lived knew he could use impetus. Arikos flipped the files in his hand and continued. On the 14th day of the 2nd month of this year, roughly 8 months ago, he was beaten up quite severely by the owner of a bakery. The owner was a normal man who couldn't use impetus. If Leguna could already use it, he would have been the one doing the beating. I can only find 2 explanations. Either Leguna hid his impetus completely, so much so he didn't even use it when he was being beaten. This is highly unlikely. He used his battle force to deal with 3 cellmates with whom he was imprisoned, so I believe he's not the kind of person to hide his strength. Or he only gained the ability to use impetus recently, sometime after the 14th of 2nd at the earliest. Even though I'm doubtful this is the case, as it would mean he trained his impetus to the 5th stratum within just 8 months, which is completely ludicrous. I can't think of any other explanation. Of that, there is no doubt. Laguna's impetus is something he only gained recently, said Wireless. I have no choice but to agree. Even though Arikos didn't know how Wireless came to this conclusion, he didn't doubt what his chairman said. After accepting the fact without contest, Arikos couldn't help but say, if that's the case, The child's potential is far too frightening. No, Arikos, Wireless said as he shook his head. While he does have amazing potential, it's not as shocking as you think. His ability to use fifth stratum impetus is only a manifestation of his suppressed potential over the years. His growth from now on won't be as fast. What else? How'd he do today? Far better than we thought he would, Arikos replied. This time, I deployed level 4 security, which only level 8 thieves should be able to sneak in. But he managed to do it. Not only that, Chairman, Arikos said with a smile. He made a soundless entry. Oh, mused Wireless with a trace of surprise. Soundless entries referred to entering a place undetected without subduing a single enemy. As the most accomplished assassin and thief alive, Wireless knew how hard it was to do, hence his surprise that Leguna managed it. Arikos nodded. After dealing with him, I got a head count for the guards and also checked the traps we laid. None of the traps were triggered. I later learned Leguna had managed to sneak in by ducking under the shade of a tree. Those blind fools. Do they all have night blindness or something? You have to make sure they eat more vegetables, said Wireless as he slapped his forehead. He exceeded all our expectations. Chairman, are you still sure you want to raise him according to the old plan? Asked Arikos carefully. Yes, there's no need to change it, Wireless replied after some thought. He's still young. It isn't appropriate to involve him in the guild's matters just yet. If you let him enter the inner circle so soon, he might turn into another Baylor. Keep it the way it is. By your will, said Arikos as he bowed. What's Baylor up to lately? Asked Wireless. According to our reports, he isn't currently on a mission. I believe he went to the Orcs' territory with the pretense of training. Does he even bother to come up with an excuse anymore? Said Wireless as he furrowed his brow. Well, he's just a kid. He isn't even 20 yet, shrugged Arikos. I can understand his rashness, but I won't tolerate idiocy. Wireless said coldly. Continue to monitor him and bring him back if needed. Leave the documents on the desk. I will look at them when I have the time. Thanks for your hard work. You should go take a rest. It's my pleasure to serve you, Chairman, replied Arikos before he bowed and left. The next day, Leguna opened his eyes groggily and slapped away Kurdak's leg on his head. It stinks. Boss, didn't you wash your feet yesterday? Kurdak mumbled. I was the one who carried you here yesterday, you know. I was too tired to move. After you got drunk, you did nothing but monkey about. You even jumped around when I brought you back. It was difficult to deal with you even with Vera's help. Also, this is my bed, so you should be thankful I'm letting you sleep in it. Stop being so demanding. These days, Leguna shared a bed with Kurdak. The three each had their own room in the inn, but ever since he joined them, they had to accommodate him somehow. Even though neither of the three wanted to share their bed with another person, the inn didn't have any vacant rooms. He either had to sleep in the walkway or with one of them. As expected, Leguna wouldn't be allowed to share Vera's room, whether she agreed or not. Kurdak and Cyranos definitely wouldn't permit it. The quiet Cyranos didn't seem to be an ideal candidate for a roommate either, so Kurdak was the first man with whom he shared a bed. At the very least, you should pay attention to cleanliness, Leguna said as he rolled around comfortably, before he saw Fair, small leg. Boss, why do you have feet of different sizes? This large one smells far worse than the small one. He slowed his words the moment he felt something was amiss. Firstly, even though the two had to share a bed, given his small physique and the fact that Kurdak was sleeping facing the other end, the bed should feel rather spacious. However, he felt rather pressed for space, as if there was another person sleeping with them. It didn't take long for him to recall that the leg he slapped away was a right one. Yet the fair white foot before him also seemed to be a right foot. When he looked around the room, he realized it looked different from before. For some reason, the blue sheet he was used to seeing was actually pink. All of a sudden, Leguna felt fear well up in the depths of his mind that helped wash away his hangover. He carefully peeked at the owner of the slender foot and prayed that the situation was not what he imagined it to be. When he saw the person with the slender foot, he breathed a relieved sigh. There's no point in struggling this time around. I'm dead meat. Dead. Or a grig. Goodbye, sweet world. It was nice while it lasted, were Leguna's final thoughts. However, After seeing Vera was still unconscious, a spark of hope lit up in his mind. He got out of the bed as quietly as he could, wanted to leave right away. But seeing Kurdak still snoring away, not knowing any better, he steeled his resolve to give him a hand. Boss, we have to leave now," whispered Leguna as softly as an insect's buzz as he slapped Kurdak's face. "Ouch, what are you doing?" "I'm trying to sleep," groaned Kurdak at a volume that almost made Leguna take out his dagger and silence him. He hurriedly clasped Kurdak's mouth and looked at the huge man with a glare so serious even the most serious maiden would be love-struck. "Turn around and take a look. If you value your life, don't make a sound, or we'll both die." Kurdak looked curiously, and his face paled immediately before it blackened and turned green. "Let's go," said Kurdak softly as the hangover failed him. He tried to leave as quietly as he could. Cyrano's awoke later than usual. Even though he was the party's most organized member, he didn't feel like waking up right away. He'd had quite a bit to drink. After he finally got up, he began to wash up. A few minutes later, he had already gotten dressed and came over to Kurdak's room. As those two were lazy bums, Cyrano's had no choice but to serve as their human alarm clock. Cyrano's knocked the door, but there was no response. Did they already get up? Don't tell me they already left, thought Cyrano's. Kurdak still had something to settle with Leguna, so they might have left early in the morning. But, considering how laid back those two were, he shook his head and dismissed the thought before he knocked on Vera's door. Vera should still be here, right? Thought Cyrano's, before he heard Vera's sleepy voice say, "Oh, Cyrano's? I'm coming." "Yeah. Why are the two of you in my bed?" "Cyrano's, we will haunt you forever as ghosts," cried two other voices in the room. That was Kurdak and Leguna? "What's going on?" wondered Cyrano's. Vera only opened the door to her room after a few minutes. In that span of time, Cyrano's heard sounds of scolding, slapping, scratching, and cries of pain. When he entered the room, he saw two people that looked just slightly familiar to him, forced to sit on a chair. If I take away the red hand marks on their faces and the scratch marks on their limbs, as well as their messed up hair, those two should be people I know. They must be Kurdak and Leguna, thought Cyrano's, before he looked at the two of them and back at Vera and formed a guess about the situation. "Were the two of you roughed up?" asked Cyrano's in a low voice. "No shit," cried the two in unison as they each gave Cyrano's a slap. "We fear not godly enemies," began Leguna. "Only godforsaken allies," finished Kurdak. Vera braked at the two of them. "You're still blaming it on someone else? It was the two of you that came into my room when you got drunk in the first place." Leguna was hurting so bad he started to tear up. "It's not my fault, sis. I was knocked out yesterday. It was Boss who brought me here. I don't know anything. Look at me, I'm still clothed. I was too deeply asleep to do anything. Look at Boss's clothes. If anything did happen, it's his fault. The heck. I even thought you were a loyal person when you asked me to escape. I didn't think you would sell me out this quickly," cried Kurdak, feeling like the whole world was his enemy. "Boss, this is a fatal moment. I'll be more than thankful if I make it out alive myself. I'll definitely find a way to collect your corpse after I escape," countered Leguna without the slightest hint of shame. "Cyrano's can collect my corpse all the same," cried Kurdak like a swine about to be slaughtered. "Boss, you really expect too much from me. If I escaped myself before Cyrano's came, I would have escaped unscathed. I actually doomed myself by trying to save you, so you have no right to complain," cried Leguna in a similar tone. "Can you close the door for me? I have something I need to deal with," said Vera with the brightest smile. "Can I go outside first?" asked Cyrano's, feeling as if he had learned something he shouldn't have. Cold sweat poured down his back. "Nope," Vera said with a smile as she closed the door herself. Kurdak and Leguna yelled like madmen. Come, Cyrano's. Die together with us. Ha ha ha." When Leguna left the inn, he looked at the sunny skies and people walking along the illuminated streets and couldn't help but marvel at the wonders of life. According to their former plan, he would have followed Kurdak to the Mercenary Association for registration before he headed to report to the Moonshadow Thieves Guild himself. Since Kurdak wasn't a part of the guild, it wouldn't be good for him to be present. However, after Vera dealt with the three of them, Kurdak went looking straight for a mirror and said he could no longer show his face in public. Stop joking around. If I head to the association looking like this and let blabbermouths like Maver or Keter see me, I will never be able to show my face again, exclaimed Kurdak before he locked himself in his room. Having no other choice, Leguna went to look for Cyranos, who no longer dared to face Vera head-on. However, when he saw Cyranos' face, he shook his head of his own accord and left the inn without saying anything. Even though he was Kurdak's accomplice, perhaps because he was still young, Vera wasn't as harsh on him as she was on the others. Apart from the 2 pulsing slap marks on his face, he didn't look that different. That was why he still dared to head out. He followed the directions Kurdak had given him to get to Balleur Street. I didn't know the branch of Lance's largest thieves guild would be like this, thought he a little anxiously. Currently, he felt no different from a student on his first day in school. A dark alley, a hidden, heavily guarded entrance that required a password, and hasty-looking guild members were all Leguna could see. It took him some time to find the secret entrance before he got past the guards using his recommendation letter and entered the building. He was rather dazed by the busy looks of the people within. After a moment, a well-trained receptionist came to lead him through the process of filling in some documentation and identification papers before filing them away. From that moment onward, he was a member of the continent's largest thieves guild. He thought his journey to work hard for promotions, to become a manager, emerge as a CEO, and attain a life of luxury was about to begin. But it wouldn't come to pass. The picture he had of the guild was entirely his imagination. As if being dealt with by Vera wasn't taxing enough, he was to be surprised yet again by how the guild actually looked. Is this really Moonshadow's odd job department? Where are all the guards? Forget it, even without them. They don't even look professional. What the heck is with that large sign with Moonshadow Odd Job Department written on it? Are they running a shop? Aren't thieves and assassins supposed to hide in the shadows? It's like they're trying to vie for attention to get clients. Even if this were the case, you should at least change the freaking sign. Half of the word department is already falling off. I wonder if the chairman knows. The largest thieves guild in the Eastern Continent? Way to let people down, Moonshadow. After seeing the odd job department, Leguna suddenly had the urge to properly research the various factions and powers on Lance. After he commented harshly on the place in his mind, he sighed and calmed his thoughts before he entered. Who's that chubby guy sleeping on the desk in the show? Odd job department? Seeing the guy sound asleep, he cleared his throat to try to catch his attention. Who he I? Mused the chubby man as he opened his eyes. A high-pitched voice broke out of his mouth. Oh my, welcome, fine customer, to the odd job department of Moonshadow Thieves. Might I inquire what kind of service you seek? You need somebody tailed? Or something delivered? How about having something or someone located? Moonshadow promises to provide the best service we can at the fairest price, honest. The chubby man finished his sales pitch before he noticed the state of Leguna's face. Dear customer, what's with your face? It's nothing. That's my birthmark, said Leguna as he lightly felt up his still-hurting face, before bowing slightly and saying, Good day. I am a new recruit, Leguna, here to report for duty. Oh, I see. I knew there wouldn't be customers so early in the morning. The chubby man mused with a disappointed look before sitting back down on the chair. Well, come on. Show me your recommendation. You brought it with you, right? I did, confirmed Leguna as he took out a rolled-up piece of paper from the pouch in his shirt. Laughing dryly, he explained, well, I didn't remove my clothes before sleeping yesterday, so this letter ended up crumpled. He would never admit it was actually crumpled by Vera's wrath. Ah, don't worry, said the chubby man as he received the letter dismissively. He had originally wanted to make sure the letter wasn't a forgery, but he was thoroughly shocked when he saw the signature at the bottom. Ariko's Zabaki. As a member of the guild, unlike Kurdak and the rest, he knew what the name represented. He's the guild's chief executive. He reports directly to the chairman. He's so far above me, and now he sent someone my way with his recommendation. I have to take this seriously. The chubby man no longer wore his lazy expression. Instead, he smiled as friendly as he could. He took out a form from the drawer behind him. Ah, so you're the talent Mr. Ariko's recommended. Fill this in, please. Feel free to ask if you have anything with which you need help. Oh, I'm called Sorum Terwin, Starfall Branch's manager. Feel free to call me Sorum. Nice to meet you, Mr. Sorum, greeted Leguna with a smile before he began filling in the form. Sorum looked at him. Little friend, you're an unfamiliar face. Yes, I'm from Chino, answered Leguna as he wrote. Oh, the Western continent. How'd you get here? Asked Sorum. I guess I came here to make a living. It's hard to survive over there, you know. You found yourself quite the backer. I'm sure you already know about our guild's influence. There isn't much we can't do. I'm very curious about something, Leguna said as he raised his head. Isn't the guild really powerful? Why does the odd job department look a little, well? All the recruits asked the same question. Sorum shrugged. Are you curious why we are setting up shop this publicly? Yes. I'll just tell you outright. The odd job department is, as its name implies, where the miscellaneous requests are sent. We usually find people, deliver letters, and stock. If anyone requires services such as information, assassination, and other stuff, they have to reach out to headquarters. If they can't reach them, they can also come to us. That's why we don't bother hiding, so the public can reach us easily. You should note that, while our department isn't that high in the guild's hierarchy, we're actually relatively safe. That's why we're more laid back than you expect. Ah, so that's it, said Leguna with a smile before he handed back the form. Sorum gave it a quick read to make sure there weren't any mistakes before putting it away. He then sat on his chair again. All right, filling out that form is all you have to do right now. I might as well tell you the basics while you're here. Oh, go ahead, said Leguna, pointing to his ears. All right, I'll get straight to the point. First, the odd job department assigns jobs by shifts. Usually, you'll be requested to do a job once every 1 or half a month. Your shift will come in 20 odd days, so you don't have to worry about it right now. You just have to stay in Starfall, so I can use a conference spell to notify you, said Sorum with a smile. A conference spell? Asked Leguna, confused. Sorum smiled as he nodded. My young friend, don't look at me like this. I'm a mid-order magus, you know. I'm sorry. So, Mr. Magus, stuttered Leguna with a far more respectful attitude. Even though he was an orphan who lived at the bottom rungs of society, he roughly understood magi were one of the kinds of people with incredibly high statuses. At the same time, he was surprised that Moonshadow would actually have a mid-order magus as a department head. Hey, young friend, you don't have to go out of your way to call me that. You look just 13 or 14. I'm already close to 40. Just call me Uncle. I'll call you Lay. Don't be so formal with me. Okay, said Sorum as he waved at his new nephew. All right, Uncle. Uncle Sorum, replied Leguna, a little forced. Well, I didn't know why Sorum spoke to him so warmly. He was no idiot. Sorum was a superior now. So, since he was being so welcoming, he wouldn't turn down such small request. That's it. Just call me that in the future. Well then, let's get back on topic. The way we reward our members is a little different from how the other departments do it. The folks at the information department are rewarded based on the worth of the information they gather. We have a fixed pay of 30 gold coins each month. Naturally, you can also give up on the monetary reward to receive 30 contribution points instead, explained Sorum. Contribution points? What's that? It's actually something really useful. Our guild offers things that can't be purchased with gold coins. Weapons, armor, herbs, materials, they can only be exchanged for with contribution points. Let Uncle give you some advice. If you're not in dire need of money, don't take your reward in gold coins. Save up enough contribution points, and you might even be able to get yourself an enchanted weapon. I'm sure something like that will help you out a lot in the future. If you ever need to, you can also exchange your contribution points for gold coins 1 for 1. You can't turn gold coins into contribution points, though. Thank you for your pointers, Uncle. But Uncle, I'm sure you know what I can do. I was on account on making a living through the guild. If I save my reward up as points, how will I be able to live day to day? Hey, it's not the same here as on Lance. As long as you're capable, earning money is a piece of cake. Other things aside, I can already see you have fifth stratum impetus. If you find a decent party and take on mercenary missions, you can earn quite a good living. Also, as your superior, I must take care of you as well. I will pull a few strings for you. Oh, what do you mean? Sorum smiled and stretched out his 3 short fingers. This brings me to my final point. Over here, all the mission requests we receive is up to me and my subordinate to distribute. If you need it, I can easily assign some investigation missions to you. Think about it. The things people would usually pay to be investigated usually aren't something that can be made public easily. You only have to threaten them about leaking it to extort them for some gold coins. But won't I be silenced? Of course not. Even though we're not important figures in the guild, we are still its members. The guild won't sit still while something happens to us. Not many are willing or daring enough to tease the whiskers of our tiger. That aside, most of the stuff we look into are simple gossip material, like which guy just took a new mistress, or whose wife cheated and with whom, and so on. Nobody would actually want to kill over these kinds of trivial news. Then all's well. All right, I've told you most of the things you need to know. The way we operate is really simple. You'll get used to it in due time. Here's a pamphlet. It details some regulations and things you have to pay attention to. Feel free to come look for me if you have any questions. I'm here most of the time. I'm in your care, Uncle. When Leguna saw someone approach, he knew it was time for Sorum to get back to work, so he took his leave. Look out for my notification, said Sorum as he waved, smiling after Leguna bowed and left. When Leguna returned to the tavern, Shining Star, it was already evening. After leaving the odd job department, he didn't go straight to the inn. Instead, he walked around for a while. Since he would be living in the city from now on, he felt it best to familiarize himself with the area. At noon, he ate at a restaurant before walking around aimlessly. He returned to the inn as the sky darkened. The owner was a quarter dwarf. He was short and bulky like a cannonball, but his straightforward and cheerful personality and signature brew of rye beer, aromatic and thick in flavor, made him a rather well-known figure in Starfall. Shining Star started out as a rather small inn, but the owner decided to expand the premises after his business boomed. In its current form, it served not only as an inn, but also as a department store. Given the fair prices and fine beer, quite a lot of mercenaries with no permanent places to live would lodge there. They could drink and boast about their adventures when they had nothing better to do to pass the time with their fellow mercenaries. When Leguna entered, he saw Vera, who was drinking alone as she shook her head in frustration. "Sis, why are you drinking alone? Where's Boss and Cyranos?" asked he as he walked over and prepared to order dinner. Vera looked at him with a drunk gaze before she mumbled, Lay, you're back. Did everything go well? I guess you could say that. I reported to the guild and met the department head. He's a friendly middle-aged man. That sounds good, Vera said before she poured him a cup of beer. Lay, let me tell you, since you're new here, you might get bullied. If anyone dares to mess with you, make sure to tell me. Sis will help you take care of them. Seeing Vera's drunk and slightly dazed look, Leguna felt a little moved and curious at the same time. The mercenary party treated him rather well. Kurdak had always been rather tolerant and supportive and would frequently mess around with him. He saw Kurdak as a friendly big brother figure who would stand on his side no matter what. While Cyranos was quiet most of the time, he was serious and concerned with every detail in whatever he did. He didn't speak much, letting his actions speak on his behalf. Leguna could still remember that it had been Cyranos who meticulously wrapped his injuries for him. Had it not been for that quiet man, he might have gotten an infection. Cyranos was to him what a silent, caring father was to a child. Vera, on the other hand, was markedly different from the two men. Even though she acted rash and rowdy most of the time, when he was alone with her, he could feel her caring gaze, conveying not only concern, but also intimacy and emotional dependence. It was different from the brotherly feel he got from the two men. He always felt curious whenever Vera showed that kind of gaze. He hesitated for a while. Sis, mumbled he finally. Vera mused with a distant look. Her face turned pink from the alcohol. It enhanced her otherwise average looks. Combined with her titillating figure, it dazed Leguna. He took a gulp of beer to hide how awkward he was. I feel, well, how do I say this? Somehow, you seem to care about me a little too much. Wait, that came out wrong. I just feel you treat me rather special. Do you want to know why? Asked Vera with a charming smile. I was only a little curious, Leguna said with a slight chortle. You don't have to tell me if you don't feel like it. Actually, there isn't anything that can't be said about it. Truth is, you remind me of my younger brother, said Vera with a gentle yet somber voice as she looked at him. Younger brother? Why don't I know about him? Asked he. Vera downed another mouthful of beer. Do you know why everyone takes so much care of me? Maybe because they're kind? Sis, Boss, and Cyrano's are all good people. I'm a good person as well. One lucky enough to meet you guys, he replied, pointing at himself with a laugh. Even your personality resembles his. You're just as nonchalant as he was, thought Vera as she observed the youth. You call yourself a good person? You're nothing but a cowardly, scrawny, perverted little rascal, barked she. And I'm far from what you could consider a good person, whispered Vera under her breath. Didn't you say you have a younger brother like me? Are you calling him a rascal? Leguna teased with a smile. Sis, when are you going to introduce us? I don't think there's a chance to anymore, she sighed. He died 7 years ago during the second orc invasion. What? Exclaimed Leguna. Actually, everyone takes care of you. So, well, mainly because we're all like you. We're orphans, said Vera softly. What? Laguna's mouth was agape. Then again, come to think of it, I've never heard Kurdak mention his family even after all the time we've spent together. Vera had a slightly nostalgic expression. Within was a trace of thick and deep grief. I was born in a family of hunters. We used to live in Nightsong Forest somewhere up north. Our family had 5 people, my 2 parents, my 2 brothers, and me. My father was a famed archer and a mid-ranked ranger. He kept us going with his hunting. At night, he would teach me and my brothers archery. My older brother was a hard worker, while my youngest one was rather talented. Both were far more skilled than me. Our life was simple and uneventful. But being able to spend time with my family made me understand how precious such a simple peace was. I lost that peace a long time ago. I was the only girl among my brothers, so my parents and older brother cared for me a lot. They protected me from everything. My younger brother, 2 years younger than me, was just like you. He was always joking around and playing pranks. He never messed around in front of me, though. He used to call me sis and big sis as well. Perhaps my short temper started developing because of him. One day, 7 years ago, my father left to hunt, as usual, but he didn't come back even when night fell. I thought he had stalked a prey for a little too long. It didn't happen often, but it wasn't something we'd never experienced. At midnight, we heard a commotion outside. Mother thought father had finally come home, but when she hurried to open the door, she saw a group of bloodthirsty orcs. Leguna paid intense attention, but didn't know what he could say to console her. Seeing the teary-eyed Vera, he couldn't help but feel sad on her part. At the same time, a weird feeling welled up in his heart. He couldn't tell whether he should be thankful or not for his life as an orphan. While he could listen and console her, there was no way he could understand how she felt or bear some of her pain. It wasn't that he didn't want to, he simply couldn't. He had always been an orphan. He didn't know what it felt like to lose one's family. Even though Vera was just as much an orphan as him, her memories and experiences frequently fueled tears. She had experienced and lost happiness. Leguna couldn't do anything other than console her awkwardly while trying to feel for her loss. No tears fell from his eyes. He simply couldn't cry. One of the earliest things he could remember was the stench of a pile of trash and the rat and insect-infested waterways. He had never had any family to lose. Was it a gift that he had been spared the pain of loss? Or was the ignorance of loss itself the harsher tragedy? Vera took another swig to calm down before she continued. My mother was decapitated by an orc. My older brother reacted quickly and had me and my younger brother leave through the back door and run to the south. We never went back. But he was cut into pieces in an attempt to buy us time. Back then, we only barely made it out alive. I was really horrified. It was my younger brother that tugged on my hand and brought us to Starfall. Even though we were pretty young back then, Father had already taught us to use impetus, so while it wasn't an easy journey, our lives weren't in any imminent danger. Just before we reached Starfall, however, we encountered a magus. A human magus? Yes. Was he the one who brought the two of you to... Leguna suddenly stopped when he saw the picture of hatred and unmistakable shame etched on Vera's face. It occurred to him that if the magus had helped the two of them, Vera's younger brother would have survived. At the very least, Vera wouldn't have said he died during the second orc invasion. The magus was the one who brought about Vera's brother's ultimate doom. But he couldn't understand why or how Vera and her brother managed to survive the orcs' assault and cross the forest, only to fall at the hand of fellow humans. He was a necromancer, Vera said, pained. When he met the two of us, he attacked right away. He underestimated us, though. I had third stratum impetus, and my brother was already at the fourth stratum. The necromancer was just a low-ranked magus. Even though we weren't his match, if he wanted to finish us off, he wouldn't have walked off unscathed either. So he began to talk. What did he say? He said. A trace of a struggle flashed in Vera's eyes, but she grit her teeth and continued. He said he required the soul and body of a pure boy for his necromantic spell, and that he didn't have any interest in me whatsoever. So he offered to let me leave alone and not get in his way. If I chose to stay, he said he would make sure he would defeat us regardless of the cost before he claimed my brother to fuel his spell. As for me, he said he would rape and kill me before using my soul to make a puppet. That way, I would forever be unable to escape the bindings of a physical body, even after death, and be his target of humiliation and torture. That sick bastard. Even though he didn't consider himself a saint, there were some lines Leguna would never cross. The mere thought of doing so made his hair stand on end. Looking at Vera, slumped on the table, her face buried in her hands, he asked gingerly, "And did you abandon your younger brother?" Vera finally broke down, and pea-sized tears trickled down her face. Some of her flame-red hair even stuck to her face. She wore an extremely torn and tortured expression. Even though we tried our best, we didn't stand any chance against him at all. My dad, Mom, and older brother are all dead. The people who'd been eating and sleeping under the same roof as me a few days earlier were gone just like that. They weren't even left corpses. I frequently dreamt about the bloodied axe that terrified me greatly during my escape. And I chose to abandon my younger brother, the only relative I had left. I abandoned the child who had followed me all the time, adoringly, just like that. Wow. Seeing Vera in such a sad state, Leguna couldn't help but feel endless concern and pity. Does that mean I abandoned her too? Thought Leguna. But all he could utter at that moment was, "Sis. Did you know?" Vera continued after she wiped her nose. All these years, I told myself the two of us would have died to console myself. But I can't forget the look on my brother's face when I ran away. He didn't say anything. He merely looked at me quietly. I could see hatred, disappointment, and anger in his eyes. Those eyes still haunt me every night. It's been 7 years, but I still remember that look. Even though I survived, I will always hate myself for choosing to run away. If I could go back, I would choose to stay. You call me a good person, didn't you? You are wrong. I am not a good person, and I don't deserve to be one. I'm just someone who abandoned her younger brother and left him for dead. Sis, cried Leguna as he struggled to stop the woman slapping herself in the face. He knew she was having a mental breakdown. Even though they were seated at the tavern's far corner, which wasn't too easy to see, some sensitive guests noticed the commotion and began to gather around. "Kid, did you knock that woman up at such a young age?" A tall and slender middle-aged man asked with a hint of surprise when he saw Vera. "You have great taste. But this matter is indeed rather troublesome. How about this? I have with me here a medicine made by an alchemist. She's guaranteed to feel no pain at all, and there's practically no risk. All I ask for in return is 20 gold coins and 1 night with your partner here. If you leave her with me for another night, I'll give you the medicine for free." Leguna hugged Vera as he patted on her shoulder lightly, before giving the man who held the yellow pellet in his hands a glare near absolute zero. "If you don't want to die, scram." The man was looking at Vera with a lustful gaze when Leguna spoke. He imagined how great it would feel to bed a woman with such an amazing figure. He didn't think a child would rebuke a mighty magus like him. He considered how he would punish the offensive kid. Don't you know pissing a magus like me off never ends well? Should I take one of your limbs? Things didn't play out like the magus expected However, when he raised his eyes to meet the kids, he felt a weird sensation envelop him. There was only one way he could describe it. He was trapped in absolute darkness. He could neither sense nor feel any direction, gravity, or the passage of time. There was only infinite darkness. The magus was severely unsettled. Cold sweat burst out on his forehead. He had nothing to go on to guess what was going to happen, but it certainly wasn't anything good. He left without saying another word. "Oh, what's wrong? You've been shooed away?" asked the young man. The former returned to his table. "The heck? Something's wrong with that kid," said he as he wiped the sweat off and took a swig to suppress his fear. What kind of awesome figure would frequent a rundown inn like this? The young man was rather surprised. He thought that, while the old man wasn't anyone amazing, he was still a seventh strata magus. There should be nobody in the inn someone of his ability needed to worry about. "Let's forget this matter. We'll leave right after we finish." You didn't meet his eyes just now. "I don't expect you to understand," said the middle-aged man in a low voice. "What kind of feeling?" asked the youth. "The one you get when you stare death in the eye." Leguna calmed his emotions down and continued to console Vera. Even though he had only spent a short while with her, she had taken rather good care of him. Seeing how weak she looked, in stark contrast to how headstrong she usually was, he felt a strong desire to protect her. That was why his heart rate soared when he realized the man was a magus like the one who killed Vera's younger brother. A rush of fury clouded his reason. Now he had successfully scared the man off. He resumed his conciliatory efforts. "Will you forgive me?" Even though Vera had appeared to calm down, her words convinced him she was still not back to normal. "Sis, I'm not," tried he to explain. Vera smiled slightly. "Of course I know you're not my brother, but I can't apologize to him anymore, and I don't have the guts to ask him to forgive me either. You really resemble him a lot, you know? Even though you look quite different, your personalities are almost identical. Perhaps, this way, I'll be able to live this down better. Will you forgive me?" I forgive you," he nodded. "I believe your brother forgives you as well." "Sis, you're wrong. You are a good person." "I know it. Thank you," exclaimed Vera, her eyes tearing up again. "Hey, do you think it's wise for us to not butt in? The kid's taking advantage of her at our expense," said Kurdak to Cyrano's as he looked concernedly at the kid. "Nope," said Cyrano's straightforwardly. "Why?" asked Kurdak. "While I'm not completely sure how he feels about the matter, I know for a fact Vera only sees him as a little brother. I'm not bothered." "All right, let's hope that's the case," Kurdak said with a sigh, before he looked at Vera's pain form. "She's really had it tough these past years. I hope she'll be better after tonight. If her temper decreases a bit, it'll be easier for us going forward." "Was that how you felt when you want to kill that magus?" asked Cyrano's. "Well, that's part of it. The main reason is I can't forgive someone who wrongs my woman. I was even willing to trade my life for his," exclaimed Kurdak proudly. "For you to have challenged a magus of your stratum alone. It's suicide. Don't forget it's only thanks to me that you even made it out alive." Sukomi'd Cyrano's, unusually verbose. "Sheesh, you make it sound like you're the star of the show. You just came later than me. If you had gone to do the deed first, you'd be in a similar position," countered Kurdak, oblivious to the fact that he was dissing the one who saved his life. "You made Vera think I was pummeled by some guy at the casino because of losing too much. You made me get scolded with you," retorted Cyrano's, digging up an old debt. "Well, you could have told her we were actually avenging her brother for her sake." "Why didn't you?" asked Kurdak. "I didn't want to," Cyrano smiled. "And to be frank, disposing of magus does feel rather satisfying." "Then you deserve to be scolded," Kurdak shouted. He looked back at Leguna and Vera. "Let's go. I think the kid noticed us." Sis, I think tomorrow." "No, from now on, I'm going to have a hard time here," whispered Leguna with a pained expression. "How so?" "Look," he pointed at Kurdak and Cyrano's. "TC, it's only those two. What's the big deal?" After a good cry, Vera seemed to have returned to her usual self. The alcohol in her system seemed to have worn off as well. "Sis, don't tell me you still haven't realized it, even after so many years." Vera furrowed her brow. "Realized what? You really didn't notice anything? Cut it with your riddles. What did I miss?" Vera gave him a weird look. Sigh, putting aside Cyrano's, I'll bet 10 gold coins boss has a thing for you. Vera hurriedly covered Laguna's mouth. You little punk, gossiping around at a young age. We're only partners, that's all. Seeing the embarrassed Vera, he couldn't help but laugh. He'd had a rather good day. Not only did he manage to strike up a relationship with his superior in the morning, ensuring his career would be smooth sailing in the coming days, he'd also managed to travel around Starfall and familiarize himself with the place so he would no longer get lost. And in the evening, he managed to see all 4 of Vera's sides: tough, drunk, weak, and shy. While the first 2 were not particularly attractive, the last 2 were completely classic. Perhaps Kurdak and Cyrano's might even get jealous of his haul. Come on, there's no need to react so seriously. I'll go tell them, answered he after considerable thought. Tell them what? I'll tell them you're completely uninterested and only consider them your partners. They'll be able to move on earlier this way instead of pining for your affection all the time, explained he teasingly. His sadistic side was growing more pronounced as the days passed. Wawu, mumbled Vera. Oh, so you are interested in one of them after all. Come on, tell me. I won't let them know. Pushed Leguna as he stretched out his claws for more gossip. Vera looked at him in the manner one would look at a weirdo. She couldn't believe the kid that acted so meek around her would grasp the flow of the situation. I'll see if you dare. I'll skin you alive if you do, threatened she in an attempt to strangle for control of the conversation. Leguna looked at her without batting an eye. Sis, I won't be able to sleep well at night knowing that 2 magnificent men like Boss and Cyrano's are being wasted on you. Even if you're quite a fine woman, it doesn't mean you can monopolize the 2 like that. Given how well they treat me, wouldn't it be too cruel to leave them hanging without a proper answer? You are cruel and heartless. I see my care has been wasted on you. Come on, I'm just curious, all right? If you won't say, I'll guess, complained Leguna, rolling his eyes. Vera didn't attempt to stop him at all. Well, I think it's Cyrano's. He looks more reliable and is more handsome. He also has a rather pleasant personality. Don't the others always say quiet men are more mysterious and alluring? TCH. Vera clicked her tongue. That Cyrano's is such a bore. He hardly ever speaks twice a day. Being with him would be far too dull. Cyrano's sneezed the moment Vera spoke. Oh, you caught a cold? Is your constitution that weak? Mocked Kurdak. Leguna didn't think Vera would criticize the man he thought would be her ideal type. With a flash of inspiration, he continued with a sly gaze. Oh, so you like Boss after all? Your taste is rather heavy. That's even more wrong. Vera reacted strongly. Just look at his huge frame. He's just like a dumb bear. He's not just ill-tempered, he also slacks off a lot. Why would anyone like a guy like him? Achoo, achoo, achoo. This time, it was Kurdak's turn to sneeze. Seeing Cyrano's disdainful gaze, he laughed. Hee. If that isn't a creepy coincidence, I don't know what is. Dawn came once more. Leguna breathed a sigh of relief when he saw no smooth leg in his bed. Leguna nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the loudly snoring Kurdak. My life's finally back to normal. Rather than returning to normal, however, it would be more appropriate to say it had improved quite substantially. Come on, Lay. What do you want to eat? Don't hold back, tell your boss. I'm going to treat you today, so eat till you're full, encouraged Kurdak as he patted on his chest heartily under Vera and Cyrano's odd gazes. Kurdak was treating Leguna like he was his long-lost son. Did you pledge to be his adopted son? Asked Vera cautiously. What are you talking about? Leguna exclaimed as he rolled his eyes. What adopted son? Adoptive fathers only ever want daughters. Have you ever met one that wants a son? Then why is he being so nice to you all of a sudden? Asked Vera. Really? I didn't notice anything different. Sis, you're overthinking this, countered Leguna in an effort to feign ignorance. Yeah, I'm just trying my best to be a good boss. I can't have him calling me that for nothing, right? Accompanied Kurdak. Look at those 2 crazies having each other's back like that, pressed Vera. Lay, now that I've treated you to a meal, about that matter? Well, can you tell me a bit about it? Asked Kurdak softly, face full of desire like a dog begging for a bone. Come on, boss. It's not that I don't want to tell you. I promise, sis, to keep it between us. I really can't say. At the very least, you'll have to wait for a few more days, okay? Whispered Leguna. Hee, very well. I can wait a few days, acquiesced Kurdak casually. You darn little fox. I'll let you have your way for this couple of days, but when I have my answer, I'll make you vomit all the food you made me pay for. Thought he secretly. Leguna was full of smiles as he thought about how he could best use this chance to squeeze as much out of his boss as possible. Perhaps I can even get Cyrano's involved. When he first realized the two were staring at him, sitting with the crying Vera, he thought his life would end soon. To prevent the two from kicking him out, he tried his best to figure out a way to survive the upcoming ordeal. Fortunately, he managed to use his conversational wit to extract some useful information out of Vera. Even though he couldn't learn which man Vera fancied, he did get some pretty juicy tidbits from their conversation. Even the slightest hint was enough to make Kurdak toss about in his sleep. The huge man began his plot to suck up to him so he could get some hints. The feast he had just offered was part of his strategy. Do you have plans for the afternoon? You two only woke up at noon, asked Vera after she wiped her lush, pink lips. I'll bring Lay to the association. It's best if he gets registered as soon as possible. I'll also check if there are any missions. We've already rested for a few days. It's about time we got back to work, replied Kurdak. I'm heading to the blacksmith's later. I think our weapons maintenance should be done, answered Cyrano's. All right, I'll replenish my arrows and get some potions while I'm at it, said Vera as she nodded. After a few moments, they all returned to their rooms to get ready. The mercenary association wasn't as messy and chaotic as Leguna had expected. He had the impression the place would be where two bulky men with chests full of hair clashed without warning. On the contrary, the association was rather clean and organized. Even the bloodthirstiest mercenaries didn't dare to act arrogantly there. They behaved like well-disciplined gentlemen. They only spoke in the softest voices necessary. Surprising, isn't it? Asked Kurdak when he saw Leguna's curious and surprised look. A little. Mercenaries feel like short-tempered people, but I don't see any such people here. Oh well, you're not completely wrong, Kurdak answered as he brought the boy through the crowd. These hunks here are precisely like you said. They aren't idiots, though. Even high-order warriors wouldn't dare to cause trouble here. Is the association that strong? How does it compare to Moonshadow? Well, it depends on how you want to compare them. In terms of information gathering, infiltration, and assassination, I doubt any force on this continent can rival Moonshadow. However, if you want to pit the association against the guild, the association will definitely wipe the guild out easily in an all-out fight. Should that ever happen, though, the association's high-ranking officials will no longer be able to sleep well at night. Why? Seriously, kid, I don't understand how you know so little about your own guild, Kurdak said as he squinted. In terms of pure fighting power, the association is easily more than 3 times stronger. But it's rumored your guild's chairman is someone everyone fears. Is it the guy who I met when I stole the book? Arikos was the strongest person he had ever met, so he was the first person he would consider such a legendary figure. No way, Kurdak barked. That guy is something like the chairman's errand boy. Wow, so the chairman's even stronger? Leguna was shocked. Someone as impressive as Arikos was just an errand boy? Yes. You should know the 3 other factions have existed for centuries. Moonshadow was formed only around a dozen years ago. They managed to grow into a force able to rival the other 3 in such a short time, and it's rumored the chairman played a huge part, expounded Kurdak. In actuality, the information Kurdak had was part hearsay and part conjecture. He wasn't sure how reliable it was, but he wanted to show how much he knew in front of this dumb kid. Whoa, exclaimed Leguna. Hearing his boss call the chairman of his guild a legendary figure made him feel his future was filled with promise. Boss, do you know what the chairman is called? He wanted to memorize the name and make the guy his goal. I don't know, confessed Kurdak with a weird expression. What about his age? Or sex? Pestered Leguna excitedly. I don't know that either, confessed Kurdak awkwardly again. Is he a thief? A warrior? A ranger? A mage? You at least know, right? Continued to pester Leguna, a little crestfallen. Well, those are all just myths. There's no way for me to get concrete information. But if I had to guess, he'd be a thief. Kurdak tried to extricate himself with a laugh. So, you know almost nothing about him. TCH, I even thought you knew so much more than your look suggested. You're actually all muscle and no brains. Hey kid, what did you just say? At least I know something about your guild's roots. You, a member of the guild itself, actually knows less than me. Aren't you embarrassed at all? Humph. At least I wouldn't pretend to know something I don't. Kurdak, it seems you have a problem with your subordinate. Sigh. I've been wondering how a party leader like you that can't even control your members survive this long. A ragtag bunch like you should just get digested into magic beast droppings, said a man with an eerie voice. Kurdak turned around and saw a long-haired, soft-looking man giving him an unfriendly gaze. As you can see, Orwin, ragtag parties like mine are usually the most fortunate. Not even one of my hairs is hurt despite all the time I've spent here. You, on the other hand, I'm really curious how scum like you managed to survive this long. Isn't there anyone who wants to see you dead the moment you exit the city? Responded Kurdak in kind. Naturally. All tried and failed. You better make sure I don't bump into you in the wild, said Orwin with a smile before he left. Who's he? Asked Leguna as he looked at the figure drift away. He felt a little disturbed at how effeminate the man looked. He's Orwin, a ninth stratum thief. He's a well-known scumbag in the area. I bumped into him half a year ago and stopped him from doing what he wanted. He's held a grudge ever since. Kurdak thought for a moment. I heard he's also a member of Moonshadow's assassination department. I didn't think the guild would take in scumbags like him. Leguna shook his head with dissatisfaction. Watch out for him. Even though he's not someone impressive, he does have his own set of skills. No one in the assassination department is a small fry. Kurdak reminded before he patted on Leguna's shoulder. However, even he wouldn't dare to cause trouble in the association. All right, let's not think about this too much. We ought to get you registered. Oh, Kurdak, you brought a newbie? He seems rather young. As there weren't many people lining up at the registration point, the receptionist quickly saw Kurdak and Leguna. He's the newest member of our party. I brought him here to register. Name's Leguna, Kurdak replied with a smile. This is Eve, he said, eyeing Leguna. Leguna gave Eve a quick one-over. She was a rather energetic woman. She had deep blonde hair and azure eyes. Her facial features weren't outstanding, but gave one a sense of energy and warmth that made her very approachable. Nice to meet you, little fellow. Eve smiled as she stuck out her hand in a friendly manner. After her eyes had scanned the child quickly, she was unsure whether to call him kid or fellow. Fortunately, she wisely decided on the latter. Nice to meet you, Miss Eve. I'm Leguna, replied the youth as he held the outstretched hand warmly. It was apparent that the way she addressed him was having a good effect. Fill in this form. Eve took out a form and handed it to the kid. Since she was still on her shift, she couldn't chat for too long and returned to her duties after the brief introduction. I have to fill out forms everywhere I go, thought Leguna bitterly. How's Cyrano's and Vera? Asked Eve as she guided him through the form. They're doing well. The last mission ended with both unharmed. They've been resting and training well. Come to think of it, I have to thank you for recommending such a good mission. We wouldn't have found such a good deal otherwise. That's nothing. I look through many requests every day. The better ones just happen to catch my eye. Then again, Cyrano's hasn't come here ever since then. Eve had a slightly moist and dazed expression when she mentioned Cyrano's. After a short pause, she looked at Kurdak doubtingly. Did you tell him anything? He's been rather busy lately. It's no surprise he hasn't come recently. Don't overthink it. Kurdak avoided eye contact as he spoke. Humph. Just look at your reaction. I bet you said something. Barked Eve as she gave Kurdak a harsh gaze. Kurdak snickered. I did that for your sake, all right? You know, Cyrano's is a little slow when it comes to these things. If you don't take the initiative, don't ever hope for something to happen between you two. I just happened to give your relationship a little push, that's all. You're the slow one. As slow as your bulky look suggests. Cyrano's is a quiet, sensible, and reliable guy. Unlike a blabbermouth like you. To think you told him about this so soon. Kurdak didn't care about Eve's insults at all. Oh, I didn't think someone as old as you would be shy about this. You should tell him how you feel quickly. If he likes you, then all's well. If he doesn't, then it's still better for you to give up sooner. There's no point in keeping it to yourself like this. TCH, you make it sound so easy. I wonder how your relationship with Vera is getting along, smiled Eve coldly. That Kurdak stammered with a blush. Vera's different, all right? Given her temper, I have to tread carefully. If I set off the wrong fuse, I'd suffer a horrible death. Hey, brat, fill out your form and stop eavesdropping. Your ears are stretched out so far, they look elven. Leguna suffered a knock to the head. I'll tell sis you bullied me, he complained. You dare tell on me. Don't think I don't dare silence you. No, spare me. In spite of his apparent moaning surrender, Leguna was all smiles. Boss, I didn't think you were that much of a schemer. You're trying to have Miss Eve take Cyrano's away, so you have one less. Kurdak hurriedly covered his mouth. He gave Eve a quick glance before he started threatening him once again. If you don't want to die, don't you dare talk about Cyrano's and Vera together. Leguna looked at Eve's odd expression and understood he had said something uncalled for. He nodded. I really don't know what's so great about Vera. I don't care if you fall for her, but she even took Cyrano's heart. I envy that woman, sighed Eve. Don't worry about it. Cyrano's and Vera are close because they've spent some time together. It'd be odd if they didn't care about each other at least a little bit. They're not like what you think. Oh, and I've also come to see if there are any worthwhile missions. Do you have any suggestions? Said Kurdak in an attempt to change the subject. Go see what old Jack has. I think I remember a decent one concerning a crimson blood bear, mumbled Eve, a little distracted. All right, kid, fill out your form while I go take a look. Kurdak gave Leguna a tap on the shoulder before he left. Oh, you're from the West? Asked Eve when she returned her attention to the kid. Yes, you fresh faces usually come from the West. Some come here to avoid persecution, while others come here to train. People have all kinds of reasons. How did you meet Kurdak? I was wandering about in a forest and ended up chased by a bunch of quick shadow drakes. Fortunately, boss came to my rescue. Were you a mercenary, Miss Eve? Me? Eve smiled gently. I used to be, but I grew tired of it and retired. I found a safer job here. Even though the pay's slightly lower, at least I don't have to fear for my life anymore. I didn't really want to be a mercenary. I think a quiet life is better. Being a mercenary is way too tiring, agreed Leguna. Why are you registering to be one if that's how you feel? Eve asked. I think you'd do better as a shop apprentice. I don't really know. Leguna smiled frustratedly. When boss said I'm not cut out for that kind of thing, I just went with their suggestion. I thought about this before. Even though the life is dangerous, it's exciting and interesting. Other jobs are definitely much safer, but they're far too plain and boring. I lived in the slums all my life, but now I finally managed to break out. I saw how big the world is. I seriously doubt I could coop up in a small place again. Eve listened with surprise. She had never thought a youth, one younger than her, could say something so moving. After thinking about what he just said, she smiled. Well, you're still young. It's better if you get some experience exploring. Miss Eve's still young as well, complimented Leguna. No way. I've already had my share of fumbling around. I only want to live peacefully from now on. A peaceful life with Cyrano's, right? Leguna's gossipy mind started to wake up. What would a kid like you know? Eve didn't refute him. She appeared far more accepting of things like this than Vera. Miss Eve's taste is rather good. Cyrano's is a good man. What's the point of having good taste? Doesn't help increase my charm at all, lamented Eve. Leguna stopped writing and gave Eve a look. Actually, Miss Eve, you don't have to be that sad. Cyrano's is quiet and keeps most of his feelings to himself. I'm afraid nobody knows what he's actually thinking. While he treats Sis rather well, it'd be a stretch to say he has romantic feelings for her. I have no idea what boss told him, but looking at how busy boss is lately, I doubt it's related to you. It's not as bleak as you think. Maybe you have a pleasant surprise waiting for you if you confess. What if that isn't the case? That's fine as well. You can't change how Cyrano's feels whether you say it or not. At the very least, knowing the truth is better than trying to guess it all day, right? Are you trying to console me? Asked Eve with a tough smile. Nah, I'm only saying what I think. Miss Eve, do you want to give it a go? Do you need me to call him over? I think it's better to give this time. said Eve, shaking her head. I'll tell him after he comes back from the next mission, added she when she saw Leguna about to say something again. That's fine as well. Leguna no longer pushed it. He knew Eve's gesture was a prayer for mercenaries. It was believed that mercenaries expected wouldn't die in the middle of a mission because they still had loose ends to tie. I didn't think a kid like you could have so many thoughts, said Eve. Hey, I never said I was a kid. Also, what's wrong with thinking about this stuff, even if I'm young? There, I'm done. Take a look. Eve checked his information and nodded. She cast a spell and set the form on fire. In a mere moment, the form was completely burnt out. Not even ash remained. All right, the information's been submitted. You're now a member of the association. Here are your badge and pamphlet. Since you haven't completed a mission before, your success rate is currently 0. Kid, you better try hard. I look forward to your growth, said Eve as she gave up resisting the urge to ruffle Leguna's short, black hair and looked at the mess she made with satisfaction. Leguna rearranged his hair without much complaint since Eve didn't go all out and rub his head without restraint, unlike Vera. Are you done? Kurdak returned. He seemed to have found a decent mission. Yep, I'm done. All right, let's go. I accepted the mission Eve recommended. Let's go back and discuss it with the others. Thank you, Eve. 'Tis but a flick of the finger, said Eve with a shrug. By the time they thanked her and returned to the inn, it was evening. A crimson blood bear? Kurdak brought the mission up when the group was gathered for dinner. That's right, Kurdak said with a shrug. The request was made from a small town up north. Lately, the townsfolk have been harassed by a crimson blood bear. Even though it's never managed to breach the town before, many were torn to pieces when they left town. The town guards will have to pay a huge price if they attempt to hunt it down. After some consideration, the townsfolk decided to pool their savings and hire mercenaries to deal with it. Reward, location, and request please, said Cyranos. Kurdak brought out the request notice. They'll pay 50 gold coins. It's not a lot, but the request said all we have to do is bring the bear's head back. In other words, the rest of the bear is ours to keep. Oh, that sounds good, nodded Vera. Even though crimson blood bears were terrifying, the party was still more than capable of dealing with them. The bear itself could easily sell for around 50 gold, which wouldn't be taxed by the Mercenary Association. The mission could net them around 100 gold in total, definitely worth their effort. After getting Cyranos and Vera's agreement, Kurdak continued. They didn't ask for anything beside the head. They don't want the bear captured alive, nor do they care about how it's killed or what's done with its body. It is a bit of a travel to get there, though. The bear shows up near Shimmer Lake in Nightsong Forest. It's the location they gave us, so we would have to track it down ourselves. The whole trip may take us around 12 to 15 days. When Kurdak brought up Nightsong Forest, Leguna carefully gave Vera a glance. Her home used to be near the forest, after all, and bringing the place up might remind her of her painful experiences. It seemed apparent, however, that if Vera was upset, all 3 men in the party would feel a little bad for her. It was something Leguna learned only recently. You don't have to look at me like that. I'm not that weak, said Vera without looking at Kurdak as she continued to stuff a piece of beef into her mouth. I have to pay more attention as the party leader too, Kurdak said with a laugh. Then, as for a guide, I left that place more than 7 years ago. I was small back then as well. My father didn't take me into the forest often, so I'm not confident about navigating the area, said Vera as she shook her head. That's fine. We can use maps. I'll buy one tomorrow so we can give a good read. I have something I need to remind you of, though. There might be orc activity near the north of the forest. Even though we haven't heard much about them in recent years, it's best if we're careful, Vera warned. She had a glint of hatred in her eyes. They're a bunch of cold-blooded animals that know no mercy. If we encounter them, we have to be prepared for battle immediately. Naturally, Kurdak agreed. He couldn't help but think Starfall uses a lot of orc labor as well. Even though they're a rowdy and short-tempered bunch, they don't really cause trouble if they're well-fed. In fact, those simple-minded yet able-bodied hairy creatures are a rather helpful bunch. They can even carry around more than 200 kilograms without breaking a sweat. Even I'm impressed. Boss, I have a question, said Leguna, raising his hand. What is it? Idiot, Leguna insulted as his face turned glum. "Thanks to your messing around, none of us can leave now." But he did say he cared about his men, didn't he? A trace of viciousness flashed past Iman's eyes before he gestured for the other prisoners to hold the unconscious sailors hostage. "Listen here, old fool. You should know these methods are not beneath people like us. If you value the lives of your men at all, you better let us leave this instant," yelled Iman in desperation, his eyes darting around to locate the source of the sound. "Please understand your current predicament. You don't even have anything to bargain with. I'm only giving you one chance. If you give up, I will make sure your end isn't an ugly one," mused the captain without bothering with Iman's threat. "I'll show you what I have." Iman snickered before he swung his sword towards the sailor at his side. Before his hand could go any further, however, he was shocked to find he could no longer move his body. It was a level 3 petrification spell. Given its simple effect, the spell was stronger the closer the dictator was to his target. It was apparent an 8th stratum magus's petrification spell was more than enough to stop Iman, who did not have a trace of impetus, from blinking. The captain gradually appeared at the entrance. In fact, he had been there, invisible all along, looking calmly at the situation in the jail. When he manifested, his hands burst into a waving fury as numerous magical bullets headed straight for the armed prisoners' faces in beautiful arcs. "This is my final warning. Those who can still move, get back into your cells and secure yourselves with the chains. Otherwise, I'll roast you alive," barked the captain coldly with a fireball that emanated waves of shuddering heat floating within the palm of his right hand. Seeing the prisoners succumb to his first volley of attacks, the captain gradually relaxed and dispersed the fireball in his hands. He maintained only his cold stare. It was at that time when a small, thin silhouette rushed out from the group of people and squeezed through the small gap between the captain and the entrance, making its way out to the deck. "Darn it, I forgot about that kid," thought the captain, shocked. He had to monitor the prisoners, however, and couldn't exactly give chase. He was certain Leguna wouldn't be able to escape with the second mate present, though. Laguna's heart thumped like a loud drum. He knew not where his dedication and courage to escape came from. But after he heard all the prisoners were people who had committed crimes that warranted capital punishment or lifelong sentences as slaves, Leguna couldn't help but feel deep fear for his future. While it was true and only natural for a child a little over 10 years like him to fear death, he was mad at Iman and the rest and couldn't imagine living with the 3 murderers. That was why he chose to escape when the captain's attention was not focused on him. Right now, however, he regretted his rashness. The second mate looked at Leguna with surprise. He had never expected a prisoner like him to have fifth strata impetus. Not only that, he was the one Hans picked on the most. However, he had chilled his gaze and prepared to kill the escaping prisoner as stipulated by the Empire's laws. He unslung the bow on his back and drew an arrow from the quiver in a swift motion. After knocking the arrow, the low thrum of a bowstring could be heard as an impetus-infused arrow shot towards the boy with eye-blurring speed. The second mate was actually a ranger well-versed in archery. Leguna swerved his head sideways, and the arrow barely missed his head. It scraped his scalp as it flew by. The trace of impetus on the arrow opened a small wound near Leguna's ear. Blood dripped from it slowly. The captain noticed and suddenly realized he had never informed the aide that Leguna was to be treated differently from the normal prisoners. The arrow had almost taken the child's life, and the second mate was already preparing his second shot. "Spare his life," shouted the captain. The second mate, shocked to hear the captain's instruction, accidentally released his arrow. It nicked the child's arm, drawing even more blood. Leguna was terrified by the prospect of his imminent death. In his 10-odd years of life, this was his first tussle with death itself. Such fear pushed him to the brink of a mental collapse. The single thought that dominated his little mind was simple: I need to leave. His immense drive to survive had taken control of his body and caused him to run straight to the walls nearby. Idiot! How can you scale a wall that high? The ranger continued to draw his bow once more leisurely. This time, his target was Leguna's calf. What happened a second later, however, completely threw the ranger into a stupor. The moment the kid reached the wall and melded into the shadows, a black smoke emanated from his body and wrapped around him before it gradually spread upwards. By the time the smoke subsided, he was nowhere to be seen. What the heck is going on here? Cursed the second mate. The captain had subdued the remaining prisoners and ran to the ranger's side. What's wrong? Where's the brat? That brat. He was forced to that wall over there, and a black smoke came out of nowhere, and then the brat was gone, stammered the second mate in reply. The heck, is something wrong with your eyes, or did you turn insane? Retorted the captain disbelievingly. It's true. I saw it with my own eyes, argued the second mate. So you mean to say he was here just now and managed to escape using a transference spell? Asked the captain, furrowing his brow. That's right. That's definitely it, nodded the second mate. Definitely your ass. The transference spell is a fifth stratum spell. Even I can't dictate it. How could a brat of 10 do it? He isn't even someone who's trained in impetus. Do you think a brat like him can both be a 10th stratum magus and an impetus user? Don't make me take the blame for your damaged brain. The captain dropped all decorum and merely continued to rebuke the second mate. I swear it's true, said the second mate, his fingers in the air. Before he finished, Hans finally came over to resolve the situation. Captain, how's the situation? Asked Hans. It isn't too bad. All the prisoners were apprehended. Only Leguna managed to escape, replied the captain grumpily. What? That brat actually managed to escape? Asked Hans, shocked. Just ask the second mate. He's the only one who had an eye on the brat, replied the captain. After another round of arguments, Hans and the captain had no choice but to accept the second mate's explanation. What we do now, Captain? Asked Hans. The captain paused in thought for a few moments. Send some of the crew to search the area tonight. If we can't find it by daybreak, we'll continue our voyage as planned, answered he finally. Idiot! Leguna insulted as his face turned glum. Thanks to your messing around, none of us can leave now. But he did say he cared about his men, didn't he? A trace of viciousness flashed past Ayman's eyes before he gestured for the other prisoners to hold the unconscious sailors hostage. Listen here, old fool. You should know these methods are not beneath people like us. If you value the lives of your men at all, you better let us leave this instant, yelled Ayman in desperation, his eyes darting around to locate the source of the sound. Please understand your current predicament. You don't even have anything to bargain with. I'm only giving you one chance. If you give up, I will make sure your end isn't an ugly one, mused the captain without bothering with Ayman's threat. I'll show you what I have. Ayman snickered before he swung his sword towards the sailor at his side. Before his hand could go any further, however, he was shocked to find he could no longer move his body. It was a level 3 petrification spell. Given its simple effect, the spell was stronger the closer the dictator was to his target. It was apparent an 8th stratum magus's petrification spell was more than enough to stop Ayman, who did not have a trace of impetus, from blinking. The captain gradually appeared at the entrance. In fact, he had been there, invisible all along, looking calmly at the situation in the jail. When he manifested, his hands burst into a waving fury as numerous magical bullets headed straight for the armed prisoners' faces in beautiful arcs. This is my final warning. Those who can still move, get back into your cells and secure yourselves with the chains. Otherwise, I'll roast you alive, barked the captain coldly with a fireball that emanated waves of shuddering heat floating within the palm of his right hand. Seeing the prisoners succumb to his first volley of attacks, the captain gradually relaxed and dispersed the fireball in his hands. He maintained only his cold stare. It was at that time when a small, thin silhouette rushed out from the group of people and squeezed through the small gap between the captain and the entrance, making its way out to the deck. Darn it, I forgot about that kid, thought the captain, shocked. He had to monitor the prisoners, however, and couldn't exactly give chase. He was certain Leguna wouldn't be able to escape with the second mate present, though. Leguna's heart thumped like a loud drum. He knew not where his dedication and courage to escape came from. But after he heard all the prisoners were people who had committed crimes that warranted capital punishment or lifelong sentences as slaves, Leguna couldn't help but feel deep fear for his future. While it was true and only natural for a child a little over 10 years like him to fear death, he was mad at Iman and the rest and couldn't imagine living with the three murderers. That was why he chose to escape when the captain's attention was not focused on him. Right now, however, he regretted his rashness. The second mate looked at Leguna with surprise. He had never expected a prisoner like him to have fifth-strata impetus. Not only that, he was the one Hans picked on the most. However, he had chilled his gaze and prepared to kill the escaping prisoner as stipulated by the Empire's laws. He unslung the bow on his back and drew an arrow from the quiver in a swift motion. After knocking the arrow, the low thrum of a bowstring could be heard as an impetus-infused arrow shot towards the boy with eye-blurring speed. The second mate was actually a ranger well-versed in archery. Leguna swerved his head sideways, and the arrow barely missed his head. It scraped his scalp as it flew by. The trace of impetus on the arrow opened a small wound near Leguna's ear. Blood dripped from it slowly. The captain noticed and suddenly realized he had never informed the aide that Leguna was to be treated differently from the normal prisoners. The arrow had almost taken the child's life, and the second mate was already preparing his second shot. "Spare his life," shouted the captain. The second mate, shocked to hear the captain's instruction, accidentally released his arrow. It nicked the child's arm, drawing even more blood. Leguna was terrified by the prospect of his imminent death. In his 10-odd years of life, this was his first tussle with death itself. Such fear pushed him to the brink of a mental collapse. The single thought that dominated his little mind was simple: I need to leave. His immense drive to survive had taken control of his body and caused him to run straight to the walls nearby. "Idiot! How can you scale a wall that high?" The ranger continued to draw his bow once more leisurely. This time, his target was Leguna's calf. What happened a second later, however, completely threw the ranger into a stupor. The moment the kid reached the wall and melded into the shadows, a black smoke emanated from his body and wrapped around him before it gradually spread upwards. By the time the smoke subsided, he was nowhere to be seen. "What the heck is going on here?" cursed the second mate. The captain had subdued the remaining prisoners and ran to the ranger's side. "What's wrong? Where's the brat?" That brat. He was forced to that wall over there, and a black smoke came out of nowhere, and then the brat was gone," stammered the second mate in reply. "The heck, is something wrong with your eyes, but did you turn insane?" retorted the captain disbelievingly. "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes," argued the second mate. "So you mean to say he was here just now and managed to escape using a transference spell?" asked the captain, furrowing his brow. "That's right. That's definitely it," nodded the second mate. "Definitely your ass. The transference spell is a fifth stratum spell. Even I can't dictate it. How could a brat of 10 do it? He isn't even someone who's trained in impetus. Do you think a brat like him can both be a 10th stratum magus and an impetus user? Don't make me take the blame for your damaged brain." The captain dropped all decorum and merely continued to rebuke the second mate. "I swear it's true," said the second mate, his fingers in the air. Before he finished, Hans finally came over to resolve the situation. "Captain, how's the situation?" asked Hans. "It isn't too bad. All the prisoners were apprehended. Only Leguna managed to escape," replied the captain grumpily. "What? That brat actually managed to escape?" asked Hans, shocked. "Just ask the second mate. He's the only one who had an eye on the brat," replied the captain. After another round of arguments, Hans and the captain had no choice but to accept the second mate's explanation. "What we do now, Captain?" asked Hans. The captain paused in thought for a few moments. "Send some of the crew to search the area tonight. If we can't find it by daybreak, we'll continue our voyage as planned," answered he finally. "Idiot!" Leguna insulted as his face turned glum. "Thanks to your messing around, none of us can leave now." "But he did say he cared about his men, didn't he?" A trace of viciousness flashed past Iman's eyes before he gestured for the other prisoners to hold the unconscious sailors hostage. "Listen here, old fool. You should know these methods are not beneath people like us. If you value the lives of your men at all, you better let us leave this instant," yelled Iman in desperation, his eyes darting around to locate the source of the sound. Please understand your current predicament. You don't even have anything to bargain with. I'm only giving you one chance. If you give up, I will make sure your end isn't an ugly one," mused the captain without bothering with Iman's threat. "I'll show you what I have." Iman snickered before he swung his sword towards the sailor at his side. Before his hand could go any further, however, he was shocked to find he could no longer move his body. It was a level 3 petrification spell. Given its simple effect, the spell was stronger the closer the dictator was to his target. It was apparent an 8th stratum magus's petrification spell was more than enough to stop Iman, who did not have a trace of impetus, from blinking. The captain gradually appeared at the entrance. In fact, he had been there, invisible all along, looking calmly at the situation in the jail. When he manifested, his hands burst into a waving fury as numerous magical bullets headed straight for the armed prisoners' faces in beautiful arcs. "This is my final warning. Those who can still move, get back into your cells and secure yourselves with the chains. Otherwise, I'll roast you alive," barked the captain coldly with a fireball that emanated waves of shuddering heat floating within the palm of his right hand. Seeing the prisoner succumb to his first volley of attacks, the captain gradually relaxed and dispersed the fireball in his hands. He maintained only his cold stare. It was at that time when a small, thin silhouette rushed out from the group of people and squeezed through the small gap between the captain and the entrance, making its way out to the deck. "Darn it, I forgot about that kid," thought the captain, shocked. He had to monitor the prisoners, however, and couldn't exactly give chase. He was certain Leguna wouldn't be able to escape with the second mate present, though. Leguna's heart thumped like a loud drum. He knew not where his dedication and courage to escape came from, but after he heard all the prisoners were people who had committed crimes that warranted capital punishment or lifelong sentences as slaves, Leguna couldn't help but feel deep fear for his future. While it was true and only natural for a child a little over 10 years like him to fear death, he was mad at Iman and the rest and couldn't imagine living with the 3 murderers. That was why he chose to escape when the captain's attention was not focused on him. Right now, however, he regretted his rashness. The second mate looked at Leguna with surprise. He had never expected a prisoner like him to have 5th strata impetus. Not only that, he was the one Hans picked on the most. However, he had chilled his gaze and prepared to kill the escaping prisoner as stipulated by the Empire's laws. He unslung the bow on his back and drew an arrow from the quiver in a swift motion. After knocking the arrow, the low thrum of a bowstring could be heard as an impetus-infused arrow shot towards the boy with eye-blurring speed. The second mate was actually a ranger well-versed in archery. Leguna swerved his head sideways, and the arrow barely missed his head. It scraped his scalp as it flew by. The trace of impetus on the arrow opened a small wound near Leguna's ear. Blood dripped from it slowly. The captain noticed and suddenly realized he had never informed the aide that Leguna was to be treated differently from the normal prisoners. The arrow had almost taken the child's life, and the second mate was already preparing his second shot. "Spare his life," shouted the captain. The second mate, shocked to hear the captain's instruction, accidentally released his arrow. It nicked the child's arm, drawing even more blood. Leguna was terrified by the prospect of his imminent death. In his 10-odd years of life, this was his first tussle with death itself. Such fear pushed him to the brink of a mental collapse. The single thought that dominated his little mind was simple: I need to leave. His immense drive to survive had taken control of his body and caused him to run straight to the walls nearby. "Idiot! How can you scale a wall that high?" The ranger continued to draw his bow once more leisurely. This time, his target was Leguna's calf. What happened a second later, however, completely threw the ranger into a stupor. The moment the kid reached the wall and melded into the shadows, a black smoke emanated from his body and wrapped around him before it gradually spread upwards. By the time the smoke subsided, he was nowhere to be seen. What the heck is going on here?" cursed the second mate. The captain had subdued the remaining prisoners and ran to the ranger's side. "What's wrong? Where's the brat?" That brat. He was forced to that wall over there, and a black smoke came out of nowhere And then the brat was gone, stammered the second mate in reply. The heck, is something wrong with your eyes? Or did you turn insane? Retorted the captain disbelievingly. It's true. I saw it with my own eyes, argued the second mate. So you mean to say he was here just now and managed to escape using a transference spell? Asked the captain, furrowing his brow. That's right. That's definitely it, nodded the second mate. Definitely your ass. The transference spell is a fifth stratum spell. Even I can't dictate it. How could a brat of 10 do it? He isn't even someone who's trained in impetus. Do you think a brat like him can both be a 10th stratum magus and an impetus user? Don't make me take the blame for your damaged brain. The captain dropped all decorum and merely continued to rebuke the second mate. I swear it's true, said the second mate, his fingers in the air. Before he finished, Hans finally came over to resolve the situation. Captain, how's the situation? Asked Hans. It isn't too bad. All the prisoners were apprehended. Only Leguna managed to escape, replied the captain grumpily. What? That brat actually managed to escape? Asked Hans, shocked. Just ask the second mate. He's the only one who had an eye on the brat, replied the captain. After another round of arguments, Hans and the captain had no choice but to accept the second mate's explanation. What we do now, Captain? Asked Hans. The captain paused in thought for a few moments. Send some of the crew to search the area tonight. If we can't find it by daybreak, we'll continue our voyage as planned, answered he finally. Idiot! Leguna insulted as his face turned glum. Thanks to your messing around, none of us can leave now. But he did say he cared about his men, didn't he? A trace of viciousness flashed past Ayman's eyes before he gestured for the other prisoners to hold the unconscious sailors hostage. Listen here, old fool. You should know these methods are not beneath people like us. If you value the lives of your men at all, you better let us leave this instant, yelled Ayman in desperation, his eyes darting around to locate the source of the sound. Please understand your current predicament. You don't even have anything to bargain with. I'm only giving you one chance. If you give up, I will make sure your end isn't an ugly one, mused the captain without bothering with Ayman's threat. I'll show you what I have. Ayman snickered before he swung his sword towards the sailor at his side. Before his hand could go any further, however, he was shocked to find he could no longer move his body. It was a level 3 petrification spell. Given its simple effect, the spell was stronger the closer the dictator was to his target. It was apparent an 8th stratum magus's petrification spell was more than enough to stop Ayman, who did not have a trace of impetus, from blinking. The captain gradually appeared at the entrance. In fact, he had been there, invisible all along, looking calmly at the situation in the jail. When he manifested, his hands burst into a waving fury as numerous magical bullets headed straight for the armed prisoners' faces in beautiful arcs. This is my final warning. Those who can still move, get back into your cells and secure yourselves with the chains. Otherwise, I'll roast you alive, barked the captain coldly with a fireball that emanated waves of shuddering heat floating within the palm of his right hand. Seeing the prisoners succumb to his first volley of attacks, the captain gradually relaxed and dispersed the fireball in his hands. He maintained only his cold stare. It was at that time when a small, thin silhouette rushed out from the group of people and squeezed through the small gap between the captain and the entrance, making its way out to the deck. Darn it, I forgot about that kid, thought the captain, shocked. He had to monitor the prisoners, however, and couldn't exactly give chase. He was certain Leguna wouldn't be able to escape with the second mate present, though. Leguna's heart thumped like a loud drum. He knew not where his dedication and courage to escape came from. But after he heard all the prisoners were people who had committed crimes that warranted capital punishment or lifelong sentences as slaves, Leguna couldn't help but feel deep fear for his future. While it was true and only natural for a child a little over 10 years like him to fear death, he was mad at Ayman and the rest and couldn't imagine living with the 3 murderers. That was why he chose to escape when the captain's attention was not focused on him. Right now, however, he regretted his rashness. The second mate looked at Leguna with surprise. He had never expected a prisoner like him to have 5th strata impetus. Not only that, he was the one Hans picked on the most. However, he had chilled his gaze and prepared to kill the escaping prisoner as stipulated by the Empire's laws. He unslung the bow on his back and drew an arrow from the quiver in a swift motion. After knocking the arrow, the low thrum of a bowstring could be heard as an impetus-infused arrow shot towards the boy with eye-blurring speed. The second mate was actually a ranger well-versed in archery. Leguna swerved his head sideways, and the arrow barely missed his head. It scraped his scalp as it flew by. The trace of impetus on the arrow opened a small wound near Leguna's ear. Blood dripped from it slowly. The captain noticed and suddenly realized he had never informed the aide that Leguna was to be treated differently from the normal prisoners. The arrow had almost taken the child's life, and the second mate was already preparing his second shot. "Spare his life," shouted the captain. The second mate, shocked to hear the captain's instruction, accidentally released his arrow. It nicked the child's arm, drawing even more blood. Leguna was terrified by the prospect of his imminent death. In his 10-odd years of life, this was his first tussle with death itself. Such fear pushed him to the brink of a mental collapse. The single thought that dominated his little mind was simple: I need to leave. His immense drive to survive had taken control of his body and caused him to run straight to the walls nearby. "Idiot! How can you scale a wall that high?" The ranger continued to draw his bow once more leisurely. This time, his target was Leguna's calf. What happened a second later, however, completely threw the ranger into a stupor. The moment the kid reached the wall and melded into the shadows, a black smoke emanated from his body and wrapped around him before it gradually spread upwards. By the time the smoke subsided, he was nowhere to be seen. "What the heck is going on here?" cursed the second mate. The captain had subdued the remaining prisoners and ran to the ranger's side. "What's wrong? Where's the brat?" That brat. He was forced to that wall over there. And a black smoke came out of nowhere, and then the brat was gone," stammered the second mate in reply. "The heck, is something wrong with your eyes? Or did you turn insane?" retorted the captain disbelievingly. "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes," argued the second mate. "So you mean to say he was here just now and managed to escape using a transference spell?" asked the captain, furrowing his brow. "That's right. That's definitely it," nodded the second mate. "Definitely your ass. The transference spell is a fifth stratum spell. Even I can't dictate it. How could a brat of 10 do it? He isn't even someone who's trained in impetus. Do you think a brat like him can both be a 10th stratum magus and an impetus user? Don't make me take the blame for your damaged brain." The captain dropped all decorum and merely continued to rebuke the second mate. "I swear it's true," said the second mate, his fingers in the air. Before he finished, Hans finally came over to resolve the situation. "Captain, how's the situation?" asked Hans. "It isn't too bad. All the prisoners were apprehended. Only Leguna managed to escape," replied the captain grumpily. "What? That brat actually managed to escape?" asked Hans, shocked. "Just ask the second mate. He's the only one who had an eye on the brat," replied the captain. After another round of arguments, Hans and the captain had no choice but to accept the second mate's explanation. "What we do now, Captain?" asked Hans. The captain paused in thought for a few moments. "Send some of the crew to search the area tonight. If we can't find it by daybreak, we'll continue our voyage as planned," answered he finally. "Idiot!" Leguna insulted as his face turned glum. "Thanks to your messing around, none of us can leave now." "But he did say he cared about his men, didn't he?" A trace of viciousness flashed past Ayman's eyes before he gestured for the other prisoners to hold the unconscious sailors hostage. "Listen here, old fool. You should know these methods are not beneath people like us. If you value the lives of your men at all, you better let us leave this instant," yelled Ayman in desperation, his eyes darting around to locate the source of the sound. "Please understand your current predicament. You don't even have anything to bargain with. I'm only giving you one chance. If you give up, I will make sure your end isn't an ugly one," mused the captain without bothering with Ayman's threat. "I'll show you what I have." Ayman snickered before he swung his sword towards the sailor at his side. Before his hand could go any further, however, he was shocked to find he could no longer move his body. It was a level 3 petrification spell. Given its simple effect, the spell was stronger the closer the dictator was to his target. It was apparent an 8th stratum magus's petrification spell was more than enough to stop Iman, who did not have a trace of impetus, from blinking. The captain gradually appeared at the entrance. In fact, he had been there, invisible all along, looking calmly at the situation in the jail. When he manifested, his hands burst into a waving fury as numerous magical bullets headed straight for the armed prisoners' faces in beautiful arcs. This is my final warning. Those who can still move, get back into your cells and secure yourselves with the chains. Otherwise, I'll roast you alive, barked the captain coldly with a fireball that emanated waves of shuddering heat floating within the palm of his right hand. Seeing the prisoners succumb to his first volley of attacks, the captain gradually relaxed and dispersed the fireball in his hands. He maintained only his cold stare. It was at that time when a small, thin silhouette rushed out from the group of people and squeezed through the small gap between the captain and the entrance, making its way out to the deck. Darn it, I forgot about that kid, thought the captain, shocked. He had to monitor the prisoners, however, and couldn't exactly give chase. He was certain Leguna wouldn't be able to escape with the second mate present, though. Leguna's heart thumped like a loud drum. He knew not where his dedication and courage to escape came from. But after he heard all the prisoners were people who had committed crimes that warranted capital punishment or lifelong sentences as slaves, Leguna couldn't help but feel deep fear for his future. While it was true and only natural for a child a little over 10 years like him to fear death, he was mad at Iman and the rest and couldn't imagine living with the 3 murderers. That was why he chose to escape when the captain's attention was not focused on him. Right now, however, he regretted his rashness. The second mate looked at Leguna with surprise. He had never expected a prisoner like him to have 5th strata impetus. Not only that, he was the one Hans picked on the most. However, he had chilled his gaze and prepared to kill the escaping prisoner as stipulated by the Empire's laws. He unslung the bow on his back and drew an arrow from the quiver in a swift motion. After knocking the arrow, the low thrum of a bowstring could be heard as an impetus-infused arrow shot towards the boy with eye-blurring speed. The second mate was actually a ranger well-versed in archery. Leguna swerved his head sideways, and the arrow barely missed his head. It scraped his scalp as it flew by. The trace of impetus on the arrow opened a small wound near Leguna's ear. Blood dripped from it slowly. The captain noticed and suddenly realized he had never informed the aide that Leguna was to be treated differently from the normal prisoners. The arrow had almost taken the child's life, and the second mate was already preparing his second shot. "Spare his life," shouted the captain. The second mate, shocked to hear the captain's instruction, accidentally released his arrow. It nicked the child's arm, drawing even more blood. Leguna was terrified by the prospect of his imminent death. In his 10-odd years of life, this was his first tussle with death itself. Such fear pushed him to the brink of a mental collapse. The single thought that dominated his little mind was simple: I need to leave. His immense drive to survive had taken control of his body and caused him to run straight to the walls nearby. Idiot! How can you scale a wall that high? The ranger continued to draw his bow once more leisurely. This time, his target was Leguna's calf. What happened a second later, however, completely threw the ranger into a stupor. The moment the kid reached the wall and melded into the shadows, a black smoke emanated from his body and wrapped around him before it gradually spread upwards. By the time the smoke subsided, he was nowhere to be seen. What the heck is going on here?" cursed the second mate. The captain had subdued the remaining prisoners and ran to the ranger's side. "What's wrong? Where's the brat?" That brat. He was forced to that wall over there, and a black smoke came out of nowhere, and then the brat was gone," stammered the second mate in reply. "The heck, is something wrong with your eyes, or did you turn insane?" retorted the captain disbelievingly. "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes," argued the second mate. "So you mean to say he was here just now and managed to escape using a transference spell?" asked the captain, furrowing his brow. "That's right. That's definitely it," nodded the second mate. "Definitely your ass. The transference spell is a 5th stratum spell. Even I can't dictate it. How could a brat of 10 do it? He isn't even someone who's trained in impetus." Do you think a brat like him can both be a 10th-strata magus and an impetus user? Don't make me take the blame for your damaged brain. The captain dropped all decorum and merely continued to rebuke the second mate. I swear it's true, said the second mate, his fingers in the air. Before he finished, Hans finally came over to resolve the situation. Captain, how's the situation? Asked Hans. It isn't too bad. All the prisoners were apprehended. Only Leguna managed to escape, replied the captain grumpily. What? That brat actually managed to escape? Asked Hans, shocked. Just ask the second mate. He's the only one who had an eye on the brat, replied the captain. After another round of arguments, Hans and the captain had no choice but to accept the second mate's explanation. What we do now, Captain? Asked Hans. The captain paused in thought for a few moments. Send some of the crew to search the area tonight. If we can't find it by daybreak, we'll continue our voyage as planned, answered he finally.